Nice and tight in here. Episode 7 of Everybody's Bop.
Let's take that again.
Episode 7 of Everybody's Podcast, and we are now broadcasting our pirate code and hacking into the Matrix, coming straight at you from Burnsville, Minnesota. Jacobine, Cam Wadam, and Neighbor Dave.
Neighbor Dave! Yes.
Neighbor Dave's our first guest ever on Everybody's Podcast. What do you do, Neighbor Dave?
I am a mental health therapist and licensed in the state of Minnesota. And that is most of what I do. That is, for now, all of what I do professionally. I am also a meditation instructor and a nerd. Not professionally a nerd, exactly, but close. It feels like it a lot of the time.
You're in the right place.
We don't get paid yet, so
We're all doing this for free, so none of us are professional nerds. Where are you originally from?
Oh, man. So my parents are both American citizens, but when I was 2, I'm the firstborn of 4 kids, and when I was 2, they moved us to Belgium, and I did not leave until I was 20. So I'm from Belgium, but I am a U.S. citizen, and that's the shortest version of the answer
Shortest
for
version.
that. Grew up in Belgium.
What's the most prominent cultural difference between the U.S. and Belgium? If you could pick one or two things that stand out, what would they be?
It might be, it might be easiest to focus it on the U.S. because most places in the U.S., the culture is still pretty heavily influenced by what you might think of as the American dream mythos of the self-made man. So there's a lot of that in the U.S., which in many pockets means that it's very driven culture overall, very work-focused culture overall. So that's a pretty significant contrast, for sure, for a lot of Belgium. But also, Belgium's a freaking weird country culturally. So it's hard to...
So that's a loaded statement.
I don't think anybody's going to disagree with it. So at the very least, there's like the northern half and the southern half cultural bands, where the northern half borders on the Low Country, the Dutch. What is it? What is it
The
actually
Netherlands?
called?
Yeah.
The Netherlands, Holland. Yes, there's like 4 official names. Anyway, and so yeah, the northern half of Belgium speaks Flemish, which is a dialect of Dutch, more or less, and they are more hardworking. There's a sort of historically Protestant work ethic kind of influence up in the north, and they are also, on average at least, more internationally minded. Almost all of the Flemish, like native Flemish speakers in Belgium, also speak English more than passably, like close to fluent, a lot of them. And then in the south, that is not just about economics or about attitude. It's like a life thing where lots of the Francophone and culturally somewhat more French in the southern half of Belgium are a little bit more chill, a little bit more lax in a lot of, at least some ways. But yeah, so like from the ground up, different cultures there. And then get into the international population. Former colonies, immigrants from there, and also like political and business related kind of hubs and central governing bodies also in Belgium. So there's a lot culturally going on in Belgium. It is weird. I love it. It's like I also just enjoy weird and complicated and difficult to explain, and it took forever to give a basic outline. But I love it.
In the U.S., you said you had the mythos of the self-made man or the self-made person.
Yeah.
And that you specifically point out that's work-driven.
Yeah.
Work-driven. So what do you mean by that?
Work and a prioritization of one's career and lots of talk about work life. Like, that is a difference in the U.S. compared to most exposure that I've had in Western Europe. And certainly, especially the French. So I mostly grew up in the southern part of Belgium where they speak French and there's more of the French cultural influence. And the French are fanatically protective of their holidays and their time off. Lots of French people are very hard workers, and there's a lot of similarities in some ways to U.S. culture, in some pockets at least of France. But even like usually the most intense businessman types are still they're leaving right at 5 or bye. They're taking like hour and a half long lunch breaks and not apologizing. So overall it's quite different.
Face me, it can't hear you.
So it can't hear me unless I'm facing you.
Okay.
So
Got to get directional
yeah,
a little bit with the
wait,
volume.
I wonder, what if we put it right on here? Oh, all right.
Not quite an option.
Okay, so how does it look now?
You gotta face me if you want to talk.
Okay, so I got to face Jake if I want to talk. All right. Hopefully it's able to pick me up and all that. I'll be able to
Gotcha.
level it in editing.
Nice.
So with the U.S., when you talk about being self-made and it being work-driven, isn't that a contradiction? Because most people work for someone else. So if you're working for someone else, by definition then, your workday, your identity while you work is defined by someone else.
Yeah.
Are you not actually giving up your autonomy? Are you not actually losing your own definition? Aren't you taking on someone else's definition and then calling it your own?
I'm sure some folks are. The other phrase that cultural tagline, if you will, that this cultural difference reminds me of is land of opportunity.
Uh-huh.
So that's another way in which I connect that to like self-made man kind of notion, where compared to the vast majority of countries around the world, the U.S. in many ways, culturally but also legally, like encourages striking out on your own, starting your own company. Like most countries, as if my understanding is correct, it's not super easy to start your own thing. And culturally, for example, in the UK,
Well, to start this, I paid $50 to the Secretary of State, registered a business.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everything I buy for it is tax deductible.
yes. For example, culturally in the UK, it's often frowned upon if someone is appearing too big for their britches. If they're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to strike out. They'll be like, listen, mate, you're from Norfolk, okay? You're not doing anything.
Really?
I'm hamming it up a little bit, and I'm not meaning any disrespect. There are pros and cons of America having this. You could do it. Follow your dreams. Work your ass off, and it can be your name on the storefront. And that attitude of, I could make it happen. That is not an especially common, at least that I've encountered, and there got to be other countries
In Europe?
and most of the rest of the world. I think it is relatively unique, like a standout feature of the U.S.
I've heard that a lot of China is like that too.
I bet it is. I've never been to anywhere.
Me either. They talk about China is actually extremely entrepreneurial.
Whenever I visited like Southeast Asia, like they just have, there's like a mall at every corner that's like multi-storied, and each of the shops is like mom and pop stuff. There's still like a lot of chains, especially at the kind of ritzy spots where it's Louis, North Face, stuff like that. They still have places like that. But if you go to the working man's mall, it's all like mom and pop stuff.
That's cool. I haven't been anywhere in Asia. I gotta fix that.
Me either. Insane. Are you able to see that up at the top there?
Which part? Up at the top.
Yeah.
The diagram, it looks like a universe.
You handle this. Oh. Have you ever heard of Einstein rings?
Rings? Yeah, where it's like the light from a single source gets lensed, and so it looks like a ring when it arrives to us.
Right.
Is that what yeah.
What happens is you get one galaxy behind another, and it comes out, the one that's in the back, and you can see on the left side of that diagram how that one is. Basically, the one that's further back is a lens, and you can see that in the center there's that bright spot, but that's just supposed to be the galaxy in the middle. And then when it hits the Hubble telescope, it actually winds up acting as a magnifier. It's like a telescope. And then
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the next slide?
Boop.
All right. So you can also have lens and lens.
So great seeing this.
So this is actually 3 galaxies. One is at 3 billion light years, one is at 6 billion, and the other is at 11 billion. Except when you talk about that one that's 11 billion light years away, it was 11 billion light years away at the time the light left. Now it's more like 15 billion light years away because the universe is expanding. The universe continues to expand.
Yeah.
So that light that's leaving that galaxy now, that's leaving it today and coming toward us, probably will actually never be visible because the pace of the expansion of the universe is greater than the speed of light.
Sorry, is it supposed to be a face? Because it looks like a face. It's amazing.
Right.
Oh, man.
So the lensing isn't being done by a single galaxy. It's a whole cluster. That's why you see those 2 in the center. And then you can see there's actually multiple galaxies creating circles around it. Go ahead and hop to the next.
Boop.
So this particular one that I'm talking about, you can see the name of it. Can you read the name in that?
Top left?
Yeah.
AI, high-resolution multiband view of the infrared Einstein ring of insert data name of either a galaxy or a star.
Oh, you got that long name, right?
EASB 1938 plus 6.
Yeah, that plus. So one is the near one and the other is the far one.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So
okay.
the plus shows they're the same, like, visible object, but they're actually 2 separate objects. And one of them is 2 or 3 billion light years away, and the other was about 11 billion light years away. The one in the back.
Yeah.
And this was the first analyzed image of them, and they analyzed this in 2012. It's been further analyzed. So if you go to the next slide,
Happily.
that's the same objects, right? Except this is their computer diagram of those objects, right?
Yeah.
But you notice in the far one, there's a couple of there's 2 markings. There's one that looks like an A and another that looks like a V.
Yep.
So that A, that was actually analyzed, I believe it was 2020, 2021.
Okay.
That turns out that it's a smear of a dwarf galaxy. You have a big galaxy like the Milky Way, and you get little satellite galaxies
Got it.
orbiting around it.
Okay.
And then that V, that's what was analyzed in this particular paper.
Yeah.
But what that V is believed to be is actually, according to their model, it's a 26 sigma result that says it's actually it's a dark matter halo. So you understand dark matter.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I
you
understand.
got it.
I understand the basics of dark matter, but
Dark matter exists, and we have no fucking clue what it is.
If
except
that's what understanding dark matter means, I'm all over that.
dark matter is about 2% neutrinos. Experimentally, there's a fair amount of certainty that about 2 to 3% of the dark matter in the universe can be explained by neutrinos. But what else it is, nobody knows. If you go to the next slide, I have an image of that's the larger and lesser, the greater and lesser Magellanic Clouds. We've never seen them because they're visible from the southern hemisphere. They're named the Magellanic Clouds because of Magellan's traverse around the world.
Yeah.
That image on the left shows it with the foreground stars, and then on the lower right, that's the European Space Agency's image with the foreground stars removed.
Got it.
If you go to the last slide, you have a couple different ideas of what dark matter is. Now, what this image shows is it's based on the cold dark matter model. There's 2 kind of competing cosmological models, the cold dark matter and the warm dark matter model.
Okay.
The idea with the warm, it's exactly what it says. Cold dark matter is cold and it doesn't move around very fast. And warm dark matter would be hot and quickly moving in the early universe.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So
Got it.
the cold dark matter model is considered much, much more likely.
Okay.
You can see you have this like web, this network, stream of cold dark matter. And then you have these clumps.
Yeah.
And those clumps would have pulled in gas and dust not really dust. There, in the early universe, there wouldn't have been any dust. It would have just had hydrogen and helium and maybe a very extremely small amount of heavier atom that were created in the Big Bang. But they pulled in all this gas, and that's what formed the first galaxies.
Yeah.
So with warm dark matter, it would be more diffuse. And so you have a bigger question of how quickly would galaxies form. And so with this Einstein ring we were looking at, what they're saying is their model actually and their observations are more supportive of the cold dark matter model. Because otherwise you wouldn't have just this clump of cold dark matter.
Would have happened, but like much slower and therefore much.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have been visible at that
Got it.
11 billion light years ago age.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my input.
Love this stuff, man. I put this kind of stuff on. There's some other pretty great cosmology focused YouTube channels, and I just put that on as entertainment, and I just enjoy absorbing it. I just find it fascinating.
They
It's
piss me off. I'm always like,
Some of them do. I get probably not. They're not showing the papers and diving into the papers. So fair.
yeah, that's true. They got to appeal to
Yeah.
to pay their bills. They got to get millions of viewers, and you can't get millions of viewers if you're going that deep.
It's inherently nerd content, but there's diversity even within the nerd umbrella.
Yeah, you can't be a nerd about everything.
For sure.
Right.
My partner Britta is a nerd about musical theater, and I knew basically nothing about musical when we got together, but she knows stuff. yeah, it's pretty cool.
Musical theater. Huh?
True story.
Okay. So she knows everything about Oklahoma.
You know what? I bet that's not her favorite. I think culturally there's some stuff in that one that she's probably not going to enjoy it as much. But Wicked is, I think, possibly her favorite. Definitely one of her favorites.
Really? Okay.
She and I got to go see Miz together here in the Twin Cities, and that's definitely worth seeing. That is an incredible story.
Sorry, what does she think of Hamilton?
She's a Hamilton enjoyer. Okay. Yeah. She and her sister can like quote it back and forth and sing it together and stuff.
Oh, are you serious?
Hella cute.
Huh.
Yeah, that's fun.
How did I never know this?
I don't know, man. She's into a lot of stuff. I know y'all like talk photography and stuff.
Sure.
But yeah.
How long have you been a mental health therapist?
I got licensed this year in April, I'm pretty sure is when it was. I'm phenomenally bad with time frames and calendars and also schedules. Incredibly, I was basically on time today to this, so that's good. But yeah, so that is a approximately 4 to 5 year journey for a master's level to become a master's level therapist. Assuming you have a bachelor, you can sign up at most places to start your master's. Approximately 2 years of studying and then 2 years of practicing under supervision. Then you can, depending on what licensure you're pursuing, apply for kind of final state level test and apply for licensure. And then only once you have a license, you would be allowed to like start your own company, like we were just talking about. And
So you can do that if you want.
I can do that. I can put out my own shingle with my name on it. Yeah.
So would it be ethical for you to do that?
Yes, that's on a per company basis. A lot of companies in general, but including mental health therapy companies, have a non-compete clause. Our company doesn't. We're allowed to also see clients outside of the company that we work at.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason that I'm working there, like it is very good.
Okay. So what made you, it's an ordeal to become a therapist.
Some of the hoops you got to jump through, to me, felt like ordeals. I know different people are different, and some folks I talk to, they're like, yeah, that's annoying, but you're just going to do it. I'm like, sounds nice. Must be nice to be you. Some of it for me was beyond a headache. Some of it was like, I don't know, to be dramatic, it was like tormenting, like can't sleep at night. Not literally. But yeah, some of it's really difficult. A lot of, spoiler alert, a lot of therapists, being humans, struggle with imposter syndrome. Try to imagine you studied, but then it's your first time ever being in a room, just one-on-one. First time you're meeting this person, it's your first ever appointment session as a therapist. How are you supposed to be like, hi, welcome in. Let me tell you about your confidentiality and privacy rights. Also, this is my first time ever. Hope that's okay with you. Wow! So I remember my literal first time ever.
Did you say this is
So
my
you
first
do
session?
is unethical to not have the client be informed of the fact that you're an under-licensed or pre-licensed therapist. Like, clients should know that. That feels like fair.
Did they get a discount for that?
I think maybe at some companies, but again, that's
Okay.
going to be like based on different companies, but I think mostly not. And part of the idea is that they're under supervision. And so the hope is that with the combined efforts of the baby therapist and their supervisor, you are actually providing sufficiently good services and that the therapy is working as well as it should work. A discount isn't necessarily called for or appropriate. That's at least the theory, I think.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
therapy is such a strange thing also, like very strong opinions on what counts as effective therapy. So that's a whole thing we could spend the whole podcast on, frankly. Oh, man.
Give us a quick breakdown.
Wow.
You had something in mind when you said that.
Oh, yeah. What did I have in mind when I said that? That's a great question. We might never find that. Let me see if I can capture it. How the field of psychology started was with psychodynamic theory, Freud and Jung, and it was very subjective. It's very interesting. There was some stuff that Freud got right. It was like very interesting, but quickly thereafter, the behaviorist camp arose within the field of psychology. And they were very based on animal studies, and you've heard of Pavlov, another big name is Skinner. And they're like they're treating the brain, even the human brain in mind, as a black box. Almost as if they're saying, let's pretend nothing goes on there.
Sure.
What is the input stimulus? What is the response, the behavior? And let's train humans as well.
Oh, okay.
So the fact of the matter is, there's actually a lot of success to that. Turns out we are still animals. So you study some animals and how they get trained, how they respond to stimulus, and what training and behavior change looks like for rats or other mammals, etc. And you apply similar things to humans, and like to a large degree, it's pretty successful. So we still have a lot of those basic biological learning mechanisms happening, even if subconsciously we don't realize it.
Minus the ethical question, I've always wondered how well would a treat and a clicker work on a human? Because it works well on dogs.
I'll give you a slightly, maybe initially strange answer. It's already working on humans all day, every day.
Gotcha.
All of the various types of stimuli and rewards or punishments that we're experiencing all day are already forming our behavioral patterns and mental patterns, as it turns out.
Sure. Okay.
It's mind-boggling, and it's also very understandable why, in some ways, there's not so much like debate between the two camps in the field of psychology in terms of behaviorism versus more subjective, more qualitative kind of stuff. But it's pretty understandable why, historically, there has been quite a contentious relationship between behaviorism and other approaches to psychotherapy and or psychology in general. Because behaviorism as an approach is so inherently, fundamentally more quantifiable. It's much easier to study. This was the exact input. This was the exact output, behavior.
Okay. All right. So that becomes problematic because
You bet.
when you're
This
talking
turns out-
about
I'm gonna put this down. Is that okay?
when you're talking about a living thing, even a bacteria, right? You don't really know what the input is, right? Even if you have a controlled environment, you could say, all right, we've got these bacteria and we're going to put them in this digester and we're going to keep it at this temperature and we're going to shut out all the light. And then the only thing we're going to change is the pH, or the only thing we're going to change is the amount of sugar going in, right? So from that perspective, you can say we're controlling the input, right? But you can't control the amount of vibration. You can't really control what other microorganisms or what viruses entering that digestion.
And that's
right.
like the simplest case.
Right.
Yeah,
When you say we're giving humans this input, we're giving a person this input.
Yeah.
So how can, even if you're going to say I'm going to be a behaviorist, I'm going to be reductionist, like that, like how can you design an effective experiment?
So I think that I'm going to say to some degree, all of any scientific endeavor suffers from quite similar problems. And in this case, it sounds like we're mostly talking about unidentified confounding variables, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so any finding in science, it could be subject to, we just didn't know that was actually the thing. And that just correlates with what we were treating as the input, but this is the actual causative agent.
Okay.
So like that is a problem, but that's always a problem.
Okay, sure.
But I agree with you that when it comes to psychology and human behavior and human suffering, it's complicated. In a way, my responsibility, what I do professionally, is intentionally finding what are the most reliable things that at least appear to be effective for mental health stuff, and how do I articulate that in a way that is going to connect with and actually make sense to whoever my client is. And so in some ways I'm faced with that at work all day, every day.
Sure.
We think this is why a gratitude practice works. But the amount of possible confounding variables is insane. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's ask a question. Let me ask you a question from 20-something years ago. It was popular 20s. So what is the point of positive emotions? What is the value of them? Like, so if you're mad, if you're threatened, you run.
Yeah.
If you feel good, you dance.
Got it.
An obvious evolutionary value.
Yeah.
But just feeling good, sitting there and feeling good, what's the evolutionary value of that?
Yeah. So one, and from the behaviorist kind of starting point, rewards are also like part of what can create adaptive, like functional and adaptive behavioral patterns, right? So like, why does like sugar taste good to us? That is one part of the answer to what you're exploring there. Motivation is also another of the main, most basic answers. It's a sense of incitement and enthusiasm for something that motivates, and usually, again, towards things that are functionally advantageous or evolutionarily important, like sex, food, right? I think in that sense, that's usually the answer that a lot of ecologists or evolutionary theorists are probably going to give you. But in a lot of my work, there's also the bonding aspect, the relational aspect, which I find very interesting in terms of positive feelings or emotions or affect. The positive emotions in relationshiping in that context have to do with the success of the troop as a whole and not exclusively the individual. At least that's what a lot of theorists will claim, and what seems to make a lot of sense to me, which, if you want to segue to, although not directly, but attachment is one of the things that we're saying maybe is one of the topics for today, and that's exactly what that is.
Okay, all right, so get us going. You might
please note, this is for educational purposes, and you can see the reference to the website of where this came from. We might need to briefly do a loop through hemispherical differences before we get onto attachment. But we could probably do at least some of the basics of attachment and then loop through hemispherical differences.
Start where you want to go.
But in the, I'm pretty sure 60s and 70s, I hope I'm right about those dates, there was some initial research being done on the difference between the left and the right hemisphere.
Yeah, cutting people's brains down the center.
Yep, that's
to
what
see
a lot
if you
of it
could
came
relieve,
from.
see if you could relieve
Seizures.
epilepsy.
That's right. That's where a lot of that research initially came from.
Isn't that sometimes successful?
Yeah, that was by far the best approach for like really severe.
Hemispherectomy?
Wouldn't remove, as far as I know.
So I know they cut the corpus callosum is the thing that connects the two, but I can't remember what it's called. So back in the day, decades ago, They were doing some of this research. Some of the findings were maybe a little bit overblown, but welcome to science. And then the media got a hold of them and they made outlandish, very stupid claims like the female half of the brain. And it was just, it all went to shit. It was really bad news. And it actually became like close to taboo in serious scientific circles to do hemispherical research because of just how like bad it looked for a while, like the optics on it. Or anyway, I wasn't around then.
Well, media has to sensationalize to get people to watch.
Yeah. That happened, and that research basically like laid fallow for a while. And then, at least this is how the oversimplified story goes, there's a gentleman named Ian McGilchrist single-handedly resurrected the serious scientific study of hemispherical differences, and that's at least to some degree fair to state. Like, he is the big name in all of this. Not the only one, but he's definitely a big deal. 2009, I believe, he released his first serious and big book on the topic called The Master and His Emissary, which is a metaphor for the two hemispheres.
Which one's the master?
So the left, most things, just so you know, most things are connected across laterally. The left hemisphere controls the right hand. So the left hemisphere in this metaphor should be the emissary. The right hemisphere should be the master and kind of the overseer, the one that has the big picture in mind. The emissary is doing all the stuff, right? Is like being sent and delegated stuff by the master. That part of us, if you will, the emissary starts to feel like, I know all the things. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about, really. And I know how to do all these things. Man, I am in charge.
This is very Hegelian. This is like master-slave dialectic from phenomenology of spirit.
There's a lot of really cool. And I don't think that's where this metaphor is actually from originally.
Okay.
But
he may have been influenced, perhaps knowingly.
Yeah. McGilchrist is very up on philosophy and like really into it and sociology. But for the purposes of this, there's a master, there's an emissary. The master intentionally doesn't get in with the nitty gritty and the actionable and concrete so that it can maintain this big picture view and understanding and connection to everything that's going on.
Okay.
By contrast, one of the biggest issues with the emissary, especially as it gets too big for its britches, it doesn't know what it doesn't know. But with what it does know, it feels like, I got this, and really starts to believe, I know everything. If there's stuff I don't know, it doesn't matter, is the attitude almost.
So Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah, outcome of that. Yeah, this is a really helpful kind of metaphor for what goes on with the two hemispheres of the brain. The way that listeners and watchers will be able to find it in the show notes, the way that Ian McGilchrist likes to explain it is using an animal example of a bird. Hi, Charlie. You gotta stay down, buddy. Of a bird, where birds have eyes on either side of their heads. And when they're trying to pick up and pick out some food, if you imagine from like a gravel ground, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to discern, oh, this is food, this is a pebble, and they're trying to get the food, they orient the eye that's connected to the left hemisphere, the emissary hemisphere, in order to control and grasp and get something it doesn't already have. So that is the half of the brain that is more or less, its ethos is control.
So it doesn't just show up more commonly in humans, it's also showing up in birds.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so this lateralized nervous system.
Because you're talking about a split between birds and mammals that goes all the way back to the dinosaur era.
So this lateralization of a nervous system is already present, of course, in a tiny degree, but it does appear to already be present in the oldest known species. So the control in that sense, and the looking out, the vigilance, and the being in touch with what is currently the case, what is.
Okay.
Right? And so getting what we don't already have.
Is it like, would you think about it in terms of, I got to eat this steak, but I also got to watch for threats?
Yep. And so that actually
But
is
those are both immediate issues.
the getting stuff, the acquiring and the more control oriented is at least a lot of the time about stuff we don't yet have. And so it's often this future and this abstracted, this imagined for humans.
so-
Could it be like, it's summer now, right? Let's say it's summer now. Gas is $3.50.
Okay.
I need gas today, but I also know once winter comes around, it's going to drop, right?
So certainly the hemispheres are relevant with that, but it tends to be really tricky for us to really grasp this. And I think it's because of how fundamental it is. This isn't part of our conscious experience where we're like consciously and knowingly noticing, hey, here's this left hemisphere aspect of me, part of me, vibe. Oh, and here's this. We just experience human consciousness in this much more interwoven kind of way. And for most folks, it takes a while to start noticing how consistent this pattern is, where it is. There's a part of us that has very left hemisphere vibes, and another part of us, which folks often find more difficult to access, to experience in a more direct way, and notice that they're experiencing it, which the right hemisphere is like that. Because inherently, the left hemisphere, which is the one that's about control, it's connected to the right hand, which is, for most folks being right-handed, is about fundamentally manipulation.
Your speech centers are also in your left hemisphere.
Exactly.
So the very model we use to communicate
Yes.
is
So speech, but specifically Wernicke's area and Broca's area are, in large part, those are about word labels.
okay.
And so there is if you're familiar with the map and the territory problem, right?
The map is not the territory.
And the exact same thing is happening, where the left hemisphere, the emissary, is confusing the map for the territory and is quite happy to just keep doing so.
Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't know what it doesn't know. Whatever it's looking at, it's like, I understand it, I got it. And when we don't, that's often very distressing for us. When we don't feel like we understand what's going on or what's happening to us, that's usually a big issue for humans.
Okay.
And really any animal, but
My question is the right hemisphere then more associated with perceiving, and the left hemisphere is more concerned with acting and
no,
constructing.
projecting.
Projecting. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it accurate to say then that you would associate the right hemisphere with perception?
One of the most fundamental things earlier I was referencing, it's often difficult for us to understand this stuff. His book, Ian McGilchrist's book, Master and Emissary, is like tome. It's
That thing.
and relatively dense. Very well written, very understandable. It's not like reading Hegel. One of the difficulties we have, and I think this actually just is about being verbal, right? That we're trying to understand this conceptually and verbally, but the hemispherical differences are not mostly about what this hemisphere does and what that hemisphere does. It's much more about how. So the vast majority of things heavily involve both hemispheres.
Right.
And also, it's this parallel process that we don't typically notice a huge differentiation between the two, but it's this parallel process of the left hemisphere doing the control and concepts and boundaries and mutually exclusive kind of thinking or experiencing of the world and conceptualizing of the world. And at the same time, we do also have this like kind of immediate connection and perception thing, right? So the right hemisphere is about perceiving.
Okay.
Because the left hemisphere, if your MO is control, you're not interested in what you don't know yet. How are you going to control something you have no concept of and you're not aware of?
So my philosophy, I am an avowed imperfectionist. Well, what it means is I know I'm going to fuck up.
Yeah.
I look forward to fucking up.
Man, that's a pretty cool attitude, actually.
The most intelligent president that the U.S. ever had was James Buchanan. He's also the worst president the U.S. ever had. He was the president right before Abraham Lincoln. And he believed very strongly that states had no right to secede. He also believed that he, as president, had no right to stop them. He thought himself into a corner. I'm sure he was an attorney. He was a lawyer. So was Lincoln, by the way. He successfully thought himself into this corner where everything's going to shit, but I have a duty to not stop it from going to shit, right? Which was directly in contrast to his duty to stop it, right? So earlier I mentioned the Dunning-Kruger effect, where there's this point where you have just enough knowledge to think, oh, I got it.
I know everything about hemispherical differences.
So what you have to do is you have to say that Dunning-Kruger effect is actually, it's an emotion. It's oh, this is starting to click for me. I'm actually good at this. You're not, but you feel like you are. So what you got to do is you got to grab the kite. You got to catch that wind and you got to start doing before you get to where you know enough to say, oh, I really shouldn't do anything till I know more. No, start doing. And then start doing with the understanding that actually I'm going to be a fuck up. I'm going to be a fool. And but how do I put this? You can't learn just by observing and reading. The real learning you're going to get is by doing. Babies observe their caregivers, but they also are constantly running experiments on their caregivers. Yeah. If I do this, do I get fed? If I do this, do I get positive attention? Or do I get negative attention? So I think that when you talk about, you've got the side that just wants to go and says, oh, I know. I think the way to actually learn the strategic information is to run with the assumption that you're going to learn down the line what you actually don't know.
Yeah. This is something that I'm still learning. I'm still figuring out and retraining myself to do, because for whatever all the reasons are, very interesting combo of nature and nurture, I'm sure. That is really hard for me. I want to get stuck in on learning theoretical stuff and making and remaking plans, and I'm happy to do that. Functionally, I'm just procrastinating starting and learning through doing and messing up. So this is really speaking to me. I like this. Like,
really?
I should be like, I'm an avowed imperfectionist. I got to start saying that.
Put the Dunning-Kruger effect to work for you.
Yep, that's a very cool idea. I wanted to, so you were actually just pointing to attachment stuff with baby and baby learning and experiment. So let's go there next. But the last stop on this hemispherical difference thing is one place where we often can be familiar with, and it almost like one of the most direct ways of experiencing and noticing it is the tip of the tongue phenomenon, where you know something, but you can't find it in the brain. Somehow it won't come to you, and this mode of trying harder usually doesn't work. And almost as soon as you give up and you open up and you allow it to arise, it just arises.
You're laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and you're like, that's what
So this is a very strange thing, but that is the left hemisphere and how it operates to a large degree. It is very try harder when it's up against something that isn't working. And even if you actually know the real solution, it's often just, no, don't need to know that, don't know that, don't need to know that. Just keep trying harder with what I already know. So it's symbolic in a way, but it's also like an experience that everybody has had. And it's one of the most visceral, one of the most direct manifestations of the relationship between the hemisphere, where the left hemisphere is capable and needs to be able to block out the right hemisphere for periods of time. But especially with creative work, and especially where you need novel ideas, new ways of rearranging the stuff you do already know, and also with relational stuff. The left hemispheres just try harder, and I already know everything I need to know. That attitude messes us up so consistently. So that's a big part of what I do as a therapist, is help each of us get out of our own ways with this hemispherical stuff.
Because I understood the word being blocked from you is being, your brain is blocking out similar words, but in the process of blocking out those similar words, it blocks the word that you're looking for.
That might be part of it.
I've never heard of it as it's actually like the left side of your brain basically Xing off the right side of your brain from involvement.
Yeah. It is in that book, The Master and His Emissary. I think he pretty often describes the left hemisphere as arrogant. And basically, like, not only does the left hemisphere, it doesn't know what it doesn't know, but it also really feels like, I don't need to know anything more a lot of the time. But functionally, in terms of like evolutionary function, there's a time and place for that. There is a time and place for, no, we just got to stick with this. We got to push through. We got to try harder at this. There is a time and place for that, where you do want to block out extraneous and like novel stuff. But in our world, like so much of what we need is creative solutions. And in our relationships, we're often stuck in patterns that clearly are not working, but we're blocking out new options. And frankly, we're usually blocking out listening to each other really deeply.
So this goes back to your self-made person kind of thing in your work, your work, because that's what you're encouraged to do. About just go hard and dial in, but you can't alpha your way through your biggest problems.
Depends.
But there's days like when, there's a whole pile of snow at the end of the driveway, and you just gotta dig deep. Literally, you just gotta say, this sucks, and my legs are gonna burn, and I'm just gonna have to get through this.
Yeah.
But your biggest problems, like the real things of life, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm just gonna push through." That ain't gonna work.
Yeah. I was piping up to say, it just depends how you define your biggest problems.
Okay.
Because the left hemisphere being kind of arrogant and very self-consistent, but ignoring anything that, that doesn't fit with my model, so I don't need to pay attention to it. If we define our biggest problems as the things that do respond well to try harder, the left hemisphere is happy to keep believing it's a bullshit and be like, no, this is how the world works.
Okay.
And sadly, to our detriment, a lot of us do that to some degree, and then some people do it a lot, and it's very destructive.
Yeah, it works great until it doesn't.
Check it out. Attachment originally was discovered and studied in babies, pre-verbal, but usually up until about the age of 2-ish, around there, and has to do with the attachment bond, the relationship between the baby and its caregiver, almost always mom. And so that attachment that they develop, that bond, that connection that they develop, that's where we initially discovered it and identified the 4 attachment styles.
Okay, when was this?
I'm really bad at timelines. But for any listeners, and if y'all want to look it up later, Bowlby and Ainsworth are 2 of the biggest names of that original research, and mostly focused on infants and babies. And so the terms that I'm going to use for the 4 styles, the 4 attachment styles, whether adult.
One thing I wanted to ask you about was like when you're trying to break old habits, develop new ones, is the observation that a habit isn't really working coming from that right side, and then the inability to break it is coming from the left side?
I think to a decent extent, that is a fair statement. Talking about hemispherical differences is just so difficult because it is really nuanced and it is not concepts that come intuitively to us. But I think that while perhaps to some degree an oversimplification, that sounds quite fair. The left hemisphere is very often involved in stuckness. And for sure, the right hemisphere, I didn't mention this because this is one of the main things we'll talk about when we get on to talking about meditation, but one of the characteristics of the right hemisphere is big picture thinking and being in touch with a bigger picture, whereas inherently the left hemisphere is about a narrow beam of attention with lots of details.
Okay.
Yeah. Being able to connect with the big picture and recognize about a behavioral pattern, this is not actually yielding the results that I want it to, or that I want to happen in my life.
Yeah, I've been trying to change the way I think. And it's tough. Yeah, it really is tough to manipulate that. Because from being in the Navy, I get angry like, because being angry, like, it really drives me and gets me somewhere. Being angry isn't really helpful. Like,
Yeah. And last little bit, and then we'll dive back into attachment. I mentioned that from the vast majority of stuff, both hemispheres are involved. There are very few things that are fully lateralized, right? For example, even language, actually not just a left hemisphere thing. For sure, the like labels and categories part of language, that is pretty solidly left hemisphere. But metaphor, analogy, and the like art and implicit part of language, like tone of voice, for example, is actually more right hemisphere. And that's a massive part of language. And so it's not, anyway, one of the things that is the most lateralized is anger. Almost all over on the left side, which is about control.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that part of why
One day we'll talk about
it
attachment.
says shitty shit to you?
Uh-huh.
Like, that's more likely to get you angry than... Is that why trash talk is so effective?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Oh.
But we could talk plenty more about anger. And as part of attachment, we can definitely get into some of the function and especially like the social function of various feelings and emotions.
maybe that's why I'm so effective at getting shit done when I'm angry.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
right.
why it evolved. Is it didn't work. Try harder. And it
So-
originally it evolved way before we were verbal, and it evolved to energize the physical system to overcome originally physical obstacles.
Sure.
Yeah, and so now we have much more complex brains, and the stuff that we want, the desired outcome, that there was an obstacle between me and my desired outcome, that can be really abstract stuff like my values. So I want to be respected. And so when someone talks smack to me, my response is anger because I want to be and feel respected and be taken seriously. And this is an obstacle. This way that this person is talking to me is an obstacle to that.
Except most of the things that are pissing people off now are stuff they saw on Facebook, or TV.
Facebook comments, woohoo!
Type it back. So it's some bot-generated thing that babbles to you at Facebook, and then you type back to the bot.
It is
No
bizarre.
human being, maybe 2 or 3 human beings actually see it, and they don't even know what you're talking about.
All right. So, attachment theory.
Oh, I was about to say where you just finished. But
Oh,
go
okay.
ahead.
No, I think I got it. Attachment theory originally discovered because of these different behavioral patterns that is observable in the babies, in really how they respond or don't respond to their caregiver. So it's the attachment bond between mother and baby that is why we call it attachment theory. The 4 attachment styles. There are slightly different names every once in a while that you might encounter for the concepts. The 4 different concepts are more or less the same, even if it's by a slightly different name. Secure attachment, that's the one that everybody wants. That's the only healthy one. The other 3 are unhealthy and referred to as insecure attachment
The only
styles.
healthy one, huh? Okay.
Yeah, although this is the very brief simplified version of the introduction. In babies and infants, secure attachment looks like when I'm freaking the hell out, hungry or whatever my need or discomfort is, when my caregiver arrives, I respond to that soothing and it's helpful. So there's a kind of responsiveness, and especially, of course, as the baby starts to develop, grows up, I also am comfortable taking little excursions, taking risks, but in a calculated, responsible way. In a play setting, a baby with secure attachment will look at its mom and then move away and go play or explore, look back, check that they're still there, and before too long, actually come back to the caregiver. And so that is a healthy, secure attachment pattern where there is risk-taking and it's not terrifying to leave. And then they're still there. I have a secure base, secure attachment to return to. So that is what was studied and identified as some of the core patterns in babies with secure attachment, and that we can extrapolate pretty directly to human adult behavior with those things. The 2 main flavors of insecure attachment are anxious attachment style and avoidant attachment style. In anxious attachment style, the baby is closer to inconsolable. And so even when the mom arrives, the baby often doesn't soothe, doesn't calm down. And they tend to be a lot more whiny, needy, and louder. And essentially, they are amplifying their distress, amplifying their suffering. It appears that the main conditions that cause that attachment style to arise are inconsistent care. If the baby feels like it's a gamble, like sometimes they'll show up, sometimes they won't. The strategy that appears to work best and appears to manifest there is this amplify my needs, become more needy.
This is a subjective judgment by the infant that leads to this. It isn't necessarily an objective, measurable.
Oh, okay. So there's got to be at least some of that where it's on, the subjectiveness for the baby. Yes. And because just like different baselines, like some babies, for whatever exactly the reasons are, do appear to be temperamentally like more sensitive. And so that baby would need more consistent care than another baby would. But overall, it does appear that there's like a window of variability wherein it's more or less, hey, you need to be at least consistent enough as a caregiver to enable secure attachment to form. And if you are sufficiently unreliable or inconsistent as a caregiver, odds are good that this is the attachment style that will arise.
It's incredibly unlikely to be random.
And that is how they do the studies, right? Is to get the sigma down to a
Sure.
or the what are they
The
called?
p-value.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll get the p-value below 5 no matter what
Yeah.
it takes. Yeah, okay.
And that's how, those studies are done. And attachment is one of the findings in psychology that's like real robust. We've done lots of studies, lots of replication, and there's still so much we don't know because freaking humans, very complicated. But some of the basics of attachment are pretty well established and replicated. So that's anxious attachment in the babies. Avoidant attachment in the babies appears to arise when there is consistently insufficient care. It's not a gamble. As a baby, I'm thinking they're just not going to arrive. And so I'm not going to spend all this energy whining, and I'm not going to amplify my needs. I'm going to suppress and ignore my needs. So they initially thought these babies are so chill, good, healthy attachment style. And they had to actually hook up and get vital sign to realize that on the outside they look pretty okay. They're not as whiny, they're less whiny than secure attachment babies. But when you take their heart rate and their vitals, it turns out internally they are losing their shit. They are not okay at all. So that avoidant attachment tendency comes from it's not worth it. I've got to meet all my own needs. I'm not gonna reach out. And so it's avoidant of lots of things, but avoidant of asking for help, for example. But yeah, so those are the two main flavors as they were, and of course this is ridiculously oversimplified, but as they were discovered. And then in the initial research, they were like, and then there's this other category, lots of weird shit happens here. We're gonna call it disorganized. Doesn't seem to have much of a pattern. That's the most insecure of the 4 attachment styles, and disorganized attachment is, I think that is the most common way of labeling it, but like I said, sometimes you might see some other labels about that.
What does disorganized attachment mean?
I think that term originally came because there wasn't a consistent pattern that the researchers could identify, but it also often results from not just neglect, where these babies, for example, they probably got enough to eat ultimately, but especially emotionally, they weren't getting their needs met. They weren't being soothed in a way that was good enough. By contrast, often disorganized attachment arises from outright abuse.
Yeah, that's what I figured you were going, is that you were getting no input on these two, and then the last one would have to be negative input when they ask for help.
Or just in general, didn't ask for shit. And
they just get a negative input.
Yeah. So originally, that term attachment, that came from studying the mother-baby bond, right? And how attached they are, or they have a bad, insecure attachment relationship going on. But the way that I have started to think of and want to now pitch attachment styles and the human attachment system is as an embodied system which got selected for by evolution to facilitate cooperation, flexible cooperation in our hunter-gatherer troops. That's why it got selected for and why it evolved. Because we do see a lot of attachment stuff in many mammals, right? The more social creatures, the mammals, we do see that baby attachment stuff be relatively similar. So in chimpanzees and whatnot. But then, of course, much harder to study adult chimpanzees when it comes to attachment and attachment styles. But it does appear that system that probably was mostly about mother and baby being able to cooperate on the needs of the baby, right? Non-verbally, that just kept getting brought or selected for later and later in life in our hunter-gatherer troops to facilitate cooperation. Some of it can be verbal, but a lot of attachment stuff happens at the non-verbal and non-conscious level.
Can you give an example? That kind of directly, I somewhat understand what you're saying, but it's hard for me to see how that would work. For example, how does having different attachment styles, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because, okay, at the individual level, I can see how if you expect, oh, my caregivers are going to show up for me in every meaningful way, then yeah, it makes sense. Oh, I'll call on them when I'm in need. And if my caregivers ain't, then fuck them all. I'm just going to handle this shit.
Yeah.
Or if I think my caregivers are going to beat my ass, then I'm going to behave erratically because I'm trying to find a way to not get my ass beat. So at an individual level, that makes a lot of sense to me. But when you're talking about facilitates population survival,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble making that connection.
Yeah. This is one of the things I was most excited about for this podcast today is to have the poke the holes in it kind of questions and for us to explore this, because I think I have some great ideas. A good amount of it is quite clearly connected to what's there in the research, and some of it, in my defense, almost any claims that we make about evolution, especially in the evolutionary psych department, is so theoretical. It's very...
Yeah, how would you prove it?
The way that these attachment styles, these strategies that babies would use, must have been the case that those two main flavors worked in a lot of cases to literally just keep baby alive and get genes into the future, right? Or else it doesn't get selected for. And it's a lot easier to answer that. Why does it make sense for babies? So that could make sense for the more adult version of it. Attachment is so strong for us, and relationships feel like survival needs for humans because we did become, exactly how, a big question mark, but we became dependent on each other for survival in these hunter-gatherer tribes.
Sure.
And so I think the answer to that question has probably got to have to do with essentially the evolutionary niche that humans, and then I think a little extra Homo sapiens, were exploring and inhabiting and conquering and getting really good at. And I think might be a fair bet to say that in a way the niche was really just adaptability.
Okay,
right?
sure.
And because most, like you think of a beaver, like they don't, and one part of it is intelligence for sure, but they also don't, as a community, have flexible cooperation to the extent that humans do. They couldn't build an educated society that can research things and not only build much better dams, but just move out of the water and find a new niche.
Okay.
Whereas humans, not 100%, but more or less can do that. We can survive the freaking Arctic. We did not evolve in the Arctic.
The odds of them finding a use for Down syndrome beaver is really low. Mostly in humans, if someone has an extra chromosome, we will find.
What an example.
Find a job.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
We do know how to include them.
That was
Versus
so
in
not
beavers,
expected, but I
will
think
not.
that...
Yeah, that's true.
In humans, we will find a way.
Yeah. So I don't know if that feels like a satisfying answer. And also, I'm curious if I actually was addressing the real question.
Well, okay, so it makes sense to me when you're talking about like things from toddlerhood. Like you're talking about hardwiring. You're talking about it becomes part of the hardware. Like it is not an easily changed part of the hardware.
An attachment style?
Yeah, when
It's
you're
not
talking
easily changed, but I wouldn't say the hardwire usually I think of as a biologically given
okay, so it's the
baseline.
firmware then. Okay,
Hey,
so
it's difficult to update firmware. Word.
So-
That's fairly good. I like it.
what I mean is you're talking about your whole HPA. Yeah, HPA. You're talking about your entire neurological endocrinological axis. So
Yes,
you're-
certainly.
you're- how someone copes with stress.
Yes.
And that entire, when I say HPA, it's pituitary hypothalamus adrenal
Yeah.
axis.
Yeah.
The way your neurons fire in a very primal way, the way you respond to needs, rewards, and threats,
Yeah.
becomes very dialed in. A lot, basically, with the activity of that axis from when you're born till you're about 7 years old. Like it is extremely dominant. So you can't just take those things that go on in that early childhood and then say, oh, we got to talk it out in therapy or something like that. Because you're talking about how your limbic system processes, not just processes emotions on a neurological level. You're talking about your entire endocrine function.
Like how it
becomes dialed in
physically
through.
built itself.
So
Yeah.
it's, and you can teach yourself, yes, to be calmer or to try a different way of approaching things.
Yeah.
But those emotional responses and those physiological responses, they're dialed in. They're there, and they got to serve you until the devil takes you. So it makes sense to me that this is something that you're going to carry through. It's going to be just part of you. It's just going to be part of how you relate to people around you for the rest of your life. And when you talk about from an evolutionary perspective, in terms of a population, having a greater variety of responses within a population makes that population more robust to outside perturbance.
Possibly, but that is one of the big questions with attachment. Is it must have it must have worked. It must have had some kind of adaptive bonus, adaptive benefits, and probably on the like troop level, on the population level, not just one baby at a time kind of thing. Though, of course, that is still the fundamental building block. Also, it does also have to be, to some extent, one human at a time as well.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know where that line is drawn in terms of attachment, but what you're pointing to really brings up an interesting thing as it relates to attachment research. In the original research studying infant attachment, it appears that the care that the child receives and some aspects of in utero and then till the age of 2, that's mostly the window during which the baby's attachment style is being developed and like solidified in the way that you're talking about.
Sure.
And then other things probably still related to attachment, but are also continuing to be solidified and just made harder to change through the ages of 7 and 8. Yes. Yeah. And we now also know that adult experiences and often trauma can also impact our attachment system, our attachment styles, our attachment strategy. And we also know that humans can heal attachment styles and move more, at least closer to secure attachment. Folks who are way up here have much further to go, and it is much harder work, and it is possible that over one lifetime, that person that has like fully disorganized attachment, something really severe, just might not be able to like get to the finish line of, yay, predominantly secure attachment. Like,
It's worthwhile
conceivable.
because they can improve.
But man, freaking difficult work for those folks. If you're familiar, I think we've talked about borderline personality disorder and it's a very imperfect diagnostic label, but there's something there. And understanding attachment goes a long way to help us understanding borderline personality disorder and other similar things where a core feature of that diagnostic label is a relational and identity instability in that person's life.
Okay.
Cool. I like this. I dig it. Any other questions that are coming up? Otherwise, I'm going to hop back into about
going,
where we were.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah?
Go to the
Okay.
next. Yeah.
Okay. So the thing that I referenced of native or flexible cooperation, I think that is really kind of core to understanding what especially adult attachment actually is and why evolution would have selected for it. Because there are other kinds of cooperation. So I mentioned the beaver, for example. They don't have a lot of flexibility. They have some because like the rivers are so different one to another. They got to be able to adapt and be flexible in all of that. I actually don't know enough about beavers to know if they do cooperate on. Is it just one beaver who builds the whole dam?
I don't know
that would be even more impressive. Anyway, ants are on the other side of this spectrum. Ants do not have flexible cooperation. They have incredible cooperation. They can do one thing. And in fact, so much so that they actually have differentiated the roles, but only those roles, right? Sure. They're not figuring out, oh, actually, you should be an artist. The flexibility and the creativity and the novelty of human cooperation is what is facilitated by our attachment systems. And so the way that I explain it to folks, because of course, for my purposes, I'm not a researcher, right? For my purposes, I'm trying to empower my clients with the understanding and the skills they need to live the life they want to live. And this attachment stuff is a really big deal for the life we want to live, right? It really matters in terms of more suffering, less suffering, more fulfilling life, less fulfilling life, right? The way that I explain it to folks is that attachment starts with a sense of emotional safety, a felt sense of emotional safety between at least two humans. That allows for trust, whether temporarily, just this one moment, my gut tells me I can trust you or not, or in a more long-term way where, especially in a healthy partnership, romantic or other, you build a foundation of trust where we've been through certain things and I'm really starting to get to know you and the nonverbal signals, and like we have a lot of trust going on. It's kind of foundation of trust. So a sense of emotional safety allows for trust. That trust is what enables this flexible cooperation of, hey, you go do this thing that you've never done before and we've never had this plan before, but we're going to take down this bison together. You go do this. Trust me, this plan's going to work. And like we can actually trust each other.
Trust is the basis of cooperation, right?
This kind of cooperation. Do ants trust each other?
Is fair. Okay, yeah. So if you dust ants with the right pheromones, you dust an ant with dead ant pheromones, the other ants are just going to keep putting it in the dead ant pile, and it comes back. And right. So yeah, there's a fair amount of chemical signaling that just overrides any other logic.
Yeah.
With the ants, but with humans, like for cooperation, you got to at least trust somebody's competence, trust their ability.
Yeah.
And then you got to trust their motivations. I would say that's actually part of the reason why in the US things are so transactional, because people figure you can trust the bottom line. You can trust that other person is at least going to want the money. Right? What I'm finding more and more throughout my life is that very often that's not true. We have this idea that people are governed by money. And I would argue it's because we're conditioned from a very early age to want money. Money isn't naturally occurring. There's no reason we should want it if we were just living in nature. Yeah. You can't eat it. You can't build a shelter out of it. It's like Pavlov's dog. We just get conditioned from early on to say money is the thing.
I anticipate we are evolved. We do have this baseline of caring about resources.
Sure.
And I think money, we get taught quite young, money is the resource.
Yeah.
And that's why it can develop the power.
Resource and its status. But I see all the time people who are willing to sack out everything to suck on the liquor bottle or whatever other addiction, or they'd rather play their video game all day long than earn $1.
And the opposite, where sometimes if we take an example of someone who has a good amount of money and who is just actually really, truly, genuinely generous with it. And
That's true.
So that's not just about the bottom line. It might not also be perfectly altruistic necessarily, but it's kind of, or it's the side of.
Okay, so when you
similar.
give philanthropically, to a degree, you're purchasing status.
Or at the least, good to go out. Man,
Fair. Yeah.
my day is awesome.
So I kind of take the enlightened self-interest approach where I say, if I help create a better world, I get to live in that better world. But then the question becomes, when I'm 80 years old, am I just going to be like, fuck all y'all, I ain't going to live?
Don't gonna be in this world. Yeah. Sense of emotional safety, trust, cooperation. That's the theory, at least, of how that might work. How it then actually plays out is that the two basic survival needs that our attachment system started to be attuned to are don't get abandoned and don't get controlled. If you play that out real practically in hunter-gatherer troops, if you get abandoned or in some other way can't get back to your troop,
Sure.
you're probably dead.
You're toast. Yeah.
And so
you ain't gonna be alone.
That's a very, and that's about the relationships. And it's
Right.
about the.
Even if you're able to survive, you ain't gonna reproduce.
Bro, I never thought of that. That is incredible. Thank you. Yes. Also, good reason to freak the hell out. My genes are not happy
Well,
with
what it just means to me is that there's an evolutionary advantage to being.
being abandoned.
I need to not be by myself.
So that's one basic attachment need. The other one, don't be controlled, don't be manipulated, don't be a sucker, don't be taken advantage of. This is the other basic attachment need, which happens sometimes and also happened in our hunter-gatherer troops, right? And so that's the other survival need related specifically to attachment that attachment became very attuned to.
Jealousy, then, is it a way to control? Is it actually a response to a? How do I put this? Is it actually to help you avoid being manipulated?
Jealousy is a little more. I don't know if there's like a here's your answer.
Okay.
Just because human emotions and social emotions are very complex and almost none
Okay,
of them are like
fine.
just one thing. But I want to return to that because, and like we said, be able to talk more about anger. Jealousy is usually mostly anger.
Okay, gotcha.
So we should totally swing back to that. But let me make this connection. So this is my version of how I think it makes the most sense for humans to understand attachment styles. And first thing is it's not four mutually exclusive quadrants and categories. It is two somewhat distinct spectrums. All the way at the bottom, you've got secure attachment. That's the only healthy, good one. We all want to feel more secure attachments in terms of how we experience the world and our relationships. As you get gradually more and more insecure, heading upward on this diagram, there do appear to be two main paths. They are not mutually exclusive, though, but it is often the case that we see folks showing up as having either predominantly anxious attachment style or predominantly avoidant attachment style. So they're not mutually exclusive, and I just think of them as these two basic needs, survival needs, that attachment is particularly attuned to, and that one of them got more effed up than the other. Something like that. But as just like a personal story from my life and something that I have seen happen quite often with clients, I had a predominantly anxious attachment style growing up. And then at some point, I started actually doing the work involved in healing that. And then as that started to heal, I was able to notice how much avoidant attachment tendencies I also had. But I like that was just like so it was inconsequential compared to how much anxious attachment stuff I had going on in life. So that's an illustrative example.
Let me ask you, how has that helped you?
There almost isn't a way it hasn't helped me.
Really? Okay.
Because our subjective sense of self, our sense of identity, our self-worth are also part of this attachment stuff.
Huh.
And so even if it didn't positively impact my relationships, which it hella did, I actually feel better about me. So that's a very not super concrete answer, but it effects a lot. Actually, you were
So
pointing
you-
to the HPA, right? We experience all of reality, right? And so if this is
true.
improving
Yeah.
stuff there, it tracks that it would be like, how did this not help me? It helped me in all the ways.
I was reading the paper the other day. I actually have it on my phone. I haven't gotten all the way through it. But one thing they pointed out, and you've known me for a couple years, I have excessive dopamine loops. Right?
Yeah.
You've seen, right?
Yeah.
You've seen me risk my life on the ladder so I could paint the top.
I have seen that.
A couple of times. Jake saw me like basically spend 13 hours on my feet to get this house painted in a day, right? I was reading a paper where it was pointing out that children, toddlers, people who are deprived, like pretty seriously deprived, develop this huge amount of motivation.
Yeah.
And it made me think of how my mom told me, like when I was a teenager, but she basically told me, yeah, I quit feeding you really a little before you turned 2. And I was like, what do you mean? We'd have dinner, right? But I didn't have to feed you other than that because I'd just pull open the refrigerator and pull a chair up and just start eating ketchup and bread and leave a mess, create a big old mess. And she was just like, oh, I guess he feeds himself. And I started putting on my own clothes, and I'd be like, yeah, when somebody would be like, hey, your shirt's inside out, I'd be like, yeah, keep your fucking hands off my shirt. You don't have to guess too hard my attachment style, like from that.
Usually it takes a little bit more of an interview and exploration than that.
So I'll tell you, a lot of my attitude is when you talk about interpersonal relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, I'm just kind of like, these motherfuckers, they going to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to like have this connection and everything else, right? They're going to do what they're going to do, and I'm going to be just fine because I'm going to go get what I need. If I get hurt, I'm going to fix myself. When I think about myself in that way, how I'm just like, I don't know what's going to happen to y'all motherfuckers, but I'm going to be okay. To me, that feels like an extremely healthy way to approach life. It's hard for me to comprehend of a better way.
Yeah.
I can rest in this trust with other people.
Yeah. Attachment is in our nervous system, so it's way pre-rational and bubbles up to inform how we reason. Our attachment related behaviors, our attachment patterns in life will continue to make sense to us. And usually when I pitch for either predominantly anxious or predominantly avoidant, when I pitch, here's what you got to do, because very briefly, the only way to heal attachment styles is to behave in the ways that someone with secure attachment behaves.
Okay.
And then you have to holistically, mind, body, have that experience, even though your body's telling you this is death. Your body is reacting as if saber-toothed tiger now.
It's similar to when someone's trying to get over addiction. They got to be more willing to die than to continue on with their addiction, because it's actually the addiction that kills them, right? Once someone goes homeless from it, they have a 98% chance of dying from it. So it's similar here, where if you actually want to have a better life in general, you got to be more willing to throw away the life that you got now.
Yeah, that's such a good and vivid comparison. And this is like the only place in the therapeutic context when I'm talking with a client where I have to say, you're going to have to take my word for it. Because they can cognitively, they can absorb the information that I'm sharing, which I share something quite similar to this that I'm sharing now. And they can absorb, and they might be able to even then pass it on to their friends and explain it. Hey, this is how attachment works. This is why, explain it. Your central nervous system, your attachment system within you doesn't give a shit about what you know or you don't know. It's responding for survival. So inviting someone with a predominantly anxious attachment style to not relationally overfunction, telling them like, hey, just send the text and then your partner will respond whenever they respond. They're like, no, I can't just, I gotta text them again. Hey, why haven't you responded yet?
Okay.
And it's like, no, you gotta not do that. And it feels like life-threatening because we evolved to depend on each other. Attachment stuff became part of survival needs.
Oh, so that person who is, you got to text me back, a full adrenal experience.
Possibly. If it's someone with predominantly anxious attachment, y'all have started to form some attachment bonds, and you notice them being like pretty needy, odds are relatively good they have an anxious, at least to some degree, anxious attachment style.
Okay, gotcha.
And in that case, their body will be responding as if this is a life-threatening thing. And then they may treat you like you did something that bad to me.
Huh.
Yeah, because that's what it felt like to them.
Damn.
So,
okay, that's rough. That's got to be a tough life.
So here's the thing, is there is the equivalent of that on the avoidant side as well. Let me circle us back to where we left off. Those two core attachment-related survival needs of don't get abandoned, don't get controlled, manipulated, right? Those are the things that give rise to the two main insecure attachment styles. That fear of abandonment, that concern with abandonment. Folks with a predominantly anxious attachment style are oversensitized to real or imagined signs of abandonment, like not texting you back fast enough, which almost anybody else is going to be like, that's dumb. That's not a survival thing. But
I'm just checking the mics, making sure we're still
good. Okay, cool.
On the lower right,
Yep.
you can see it. So the green thing, the bright green thing on the left. Okay, so the two dull ones,
Dull ones.
those are the two cameras that have the purple. You see the red one,
Oh.
the one on the left, that is actually the mic input. And then the one on the right is the overall input.
Got it.
But the mic input is actually the only sound going into it.
Okay.
So then
Gotcha.
the mixer actually slightly amplifies the mic input. So what I'm trying to watch, I want to make sure that when we talk, it at least is bumping up between green and yellow, and that it never goes to red.
It's not reaching red.
So I'm sorry to have cut you off.
It's all good.
So that's what's going on the anxious attachment side of things.
You were saying for avoidance, there's a similar thing going on.
Yeah. So to understand this, the last little bit that we need to understand is a bifurcation in the categories of how we can soothe our central nervous systems as humans. Talking about the HPA, and remember where this started was babies freaking out because they are nonverbal, but they still need to communicate. I have needs. For example, I'm way too cold. That's a central nervous system problem. I have insufficient nutrients and I'm hungry. That's a central nervous system. This is basic homeostasis kind of stuff. So when we are dysregulated in our central nervous system, the two basic categories are self-regulation and co-regulation. So in this context of hunter-gatherer troops evolving to depend more and more on each other and on cooperation, and attachment is the system that's facilitating this within us, the folks who experience a predominantly anxious attachment style, they are over-attuned to potential signs of abandonment. And what that ends up being, or being related to, is they're very concerned that they will lose their ability to co-regulate.
Okay.
And what that ends up feeling like, though not in a way that people can like verbalize, but that ends up being this kind of embodied belief that self-regulation is not an option. So of those two categories, the way that I usually articulate it is that folks with predominantly anxious attachment styles have self-regulation in the blind spot. It doesn't come to mind, but actually back to how it impacts our reasoning. Even if you tell someone with anxious attachment, like someone's freaking out, they like, why haven't you texted me back yet? If you said, hey, what you could have done is done some breathing exercises, some grounding exercises to help calm your central nervous system, that's going to sound fucking absurd to them because it feels like the problem is in the relationship. It looked like I was going to lose my ability to regulate at all because co-regulation is the only option.
Okay, so what I would argue is that from an evolutionary standpoint, we are just much more geared to look for external threats because the external threat can kill you right now.
Okay.
While the internal stuff, the internal dysregulation, that'll kill you. That'll shorten your lifespan. But it means you're going to die when you'll die from poor internal regulation unless you're taking drugs or something to try to regulate yourself. That poor internal regulation, that'll kill you when you're 60.
not internal, external. I might.
Here's what
okay,
I'm
go for
saying.
it.
If I have trouble regulating my adrenal system, right? My sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
So I'm just always on. That does shorten your lifespan. Like you are going to develop cardiovascular problems and kidney failure and everything else from that. But it's going to show up in your late 50s, your 60s, your 70s. While an external threat, like it's something coming at you, like that can kill you this minute. So to me, it's obvious that from an evolutionary standpoint, there's a bigger advantage to mistakenly saying the threat's external than to making the mistake of saying, oh, the threat's actually inside the house. Because if the predator's behind you and you say, you know what? I just got some butterflies in my stomach. You're doomed. You're better off. Like, you have an advantage, of saying, looking behind you and looking behind you again and looking behind you again.
Yeah.
You can be like that and still survive to reproduce.
Yeah, I'm not fully seeing the connection yet to the attachment.
When you're talking about somebody who's anxiously attached and they're saying, oh, the problem's got to be in the relationship. It can't be in my HPA axis. It can't be because my sympathetic nervous system is going off. Or it can't be just in my thoughts because of how I'm processing this. It has to be external. What I'm saying is we're evolved to make that mistake.
I think being abandoned is going to kill you a lot faster than being manipulated.
So, while research on prevalence of adult attachment styles is something that I'm assuming is ongoing, that there's variability from country to country, and exactly where to draw the lines also with these things, since, at least by my take, it's more like these two spectrums and not these four mutually exclusive quadrants.
Okay.
I don't know that there are more or that many more anxiously attached folks per se.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
But let me also maybe explain some of the more, because I keep on referring to them, but there's also on the avoidant side, like the
We haven't let you get there yet.
gotten there. It's a kind of a yin and yang setup where it's like everything is flipped, reversed for folks who lean avoidant. And so the oversensitivity is to potential signs of being controlled or feeling emotionally manipulated, often described subjectively as more like this sense of claustrophobia that I had to get away. So that's often what it looks like it has to do with just not thinking that co-regulation is a good, realistic, or productive way of going about navigating life.
Waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the defense of folks who lean avoidant, it actually often does require a lot of time because we end up talking about stuff, like, for example, talking about our feelings. But both of the categories of central nervous system regulation, self-regulation and co-regulation, both of those are good. Like, why would we not want to have more options? So both of these, at least evolutionarily, they both evolved. They're both possible. If you've ever had the experience of receiving a massage that just really relaxed you, it was like, man, that's so good.
Actually, no.
Okay.
I'm too ticklish.
Okay.
As soon as somebody starts massaging my back or whatever, I'm like,
What about like a scalp massage?
I don't know. No, okay. So, yeah, I've gone to the hairdresser and they wash your hair and massage your scalp. Yeah, okay.
I'm ticklish too, but I really like when someone plays with my hair.
So that, and anything that involves
And
someone
with your
else,
hair, bro.
and that's okay with me. The tricky thing is that no matter how we feel about it, and it's a significant part of my job to talk with folks and empower them to understand what's going on with their attachment tendencies, and also to help them see at least some of the potential downsides of wherever they are on the attachment field, these two spectrums, right? But another way that I sometimes articulate it to my clients is I'm like, you can feel however you want about it, and your brain will keep providing logic that reinforces your attachment tendencies. And also, it's too late. Turns out you're already a human, and you already have both of these basic attachment needs. Don't be abandoned and don't be controlled. And actually expanding your experience, your awareness, right? and your skillfulness in terms of regulation, co-regulation and self-regulation, like that pretty much is only going to be a good thing.
Yeah, getting better at
gonna
either.
open up vistas. And even though, and this is,
If only because you have more tools in your belt.
if only that,
Because you have
but
more tools
the
and you know how to
logic
use them.
that I hear from, because I'll literally tell like folks who lean avoidant, I'm like, you have any relationships that are good enough where you can start being vulnerable and like really trying to let yourself trust them? And they're like, that's the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard. Do that. So I'm used to like working with folks, kind of meeting them where they're at, meet you where you're at, but I am so busy trying to think straight right now. And so, yeah, I'm just like so used to that, but the level of flourishing that can happen for both folks on either side of this, predominantly anxious, predominantly avoidant, it's just hard to imagine. It's hard to pitch people on, hey, this could be this much better. So anyway, on the avoidant side, where was I? On the avoidant side, co-regulation is in the blind spot, does not seem appealing. And most fundamentally, what's going on?
Wait, I mean, on the anxious side, self-regulation.
No.
He said on the avoidance side.
Doesn't seem appealing or helpful or positive.
I know tons of people where growing up, they wound up being the most stable one. I know a few people where growing up, they were the stable one. It's like they were the one who was having to co-regulate everybody else. And then as adults, they're like, man, fuck that shit. I did that my whole kidhood. I ain't doing it now.
Yeah, and who can blame them with the experience that they've had? But the real reason, like what's going on pre-rationally, like in the nervous system, is that with co-regulation in the blind spot, it feels like self-regulation is the only option. And so when someone actually moves towards us with emotional neediness, or even sometimes with any big emotions, co-regulation is an always-on thing for humans.
I actually would agree with that entirely. If nothing else, we're very highly evolved to pick up on other people's fear.
Yeah.
And that just makes total sense. If you spent a lot of time as a prey animal, which we were, there was a lot of stuff that could eat you. So picking up another person's nervousness or fear, that would save your life. Now, when you talk about, when people say, oh, I want to protect my peace, or I need somebody who's confident and calm, right? What you're saying is, what I'm hearing is, I'm actually not capable of coping with another person's insecurity.
So insecurity, yes, but folks who are like far enough on the avoidant side, even when they're in a relationship with someone who has predominantly secure attachment, folks with predominantly secure attachment are able to allow themselves to feel their feelings. Doesn't mean it's easy or pleasant to allow myself to feel sadness, for example.
Sure, yeah.
But so even someone securely attached, if they're in a close relationship with someone who's like far enough on the avoidant side of the spectrum, that person with predominantly avoidant attachment is gonna feel kind of threatened by this relatively like normal and healthy display of emotion.
Yeah.
And so I want to like land the plane on what's going on, the like underlying nervous system logic is because self-regulation is the only option. If co-regulation is in the blind spot, it doesn't even seem like an option. That's not what I want. And then my self-regulation starts to get threatened by someone having big emotions in my presence. See if they're looking to me in some way, like wanting to feel supported or wanting, like, why don't you care? Is something that I hear a lot working with couples when one partner has avoidant attachment. And it's not that they actually don't care. It's that they're very young, usually. Their central nervous system learned no feelings. No, I'm going to take care of me. And the easiest way, if people will just stop fucking with me, is if I don't feel any of my feelings. I don't feel these feelings. And also nobody with big feelings can come close enough, metaphorically or literally, that it starts impacting me, that the co-regulation just starts happening. Then,
well, what you're saying is it's a self-preservation model.
Both are. They're just very different strategies.
What it sounds like to me, almost like you're saying, is that person with the avoidant attachment, when they see that, they're going to feel disgust. Like a
Yeah,
need,
yeah.
get this potentially hazardous thing away from me.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Is usually more fear, but they're like not even in touch with the fear is the thing. They would never say, I'm afraid of your big feelings because it gives me big feelings. That's not the logic that's going on. They're just saying, oh, you're trying to manipulate me, or I feel claustrophobic, or like it feels out of control, because it is. Because feelings are not about control, really. So that's the like overall picture. Folks listening or watching, if you want to check out the diagram, there's some brief explanations of sort of typical characteristics for all 4 of the main flavors of attachment styles.
We'll post it on the website.
Right
too.
on.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. So that's the kind of basic part of attachment styles, and at least how it makes sense to me of sort of its evolutionary function, and then in real life, in our relationships, whatever amount of anxious attachment tendencies or avoidant attachment tendencies any given person has, it will be beneficial if possible in their life, because sometimes we have life situations where it's just, that's not going to happen, it's not in the cards for me. But if at all possible, addressing or healing our attachment style to develop more and more secure attachment tends to entail less suffering, more meaning, right? More enjoyment from life, a greater sense of meaningfulness in life.
Okay. Yeah, I've definitely... Talking about this brings me vividly to working on the boat. 'Cause that's like living in an echo chamber for any kind of fucking problem you have is that kind of confinement. Because it's a high stress environment and you're so locked in with the people that you got, and the situation just ain't gonna fucking change for you.
Yeah.
I've worked with people who certainly, I guess I can't label them,
But appear to you.
appear to have a anxious attachment style.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know from working with my therapist that I lean more on that avoidant,
Okay.
where they wouldn't go do work because they were afraid of breaking something so bad, like they just straight up wouldn't go if they were alone. Versus me, where I would go regardless, knowing that I may result myself being in a situation where I can't handle it on my own, but I say I'll figure it out when I get there. And broken equipment. No, because I said, you know what, I'll fucking figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a very like practical manifestation of, again, we don't know them, but like potentially these attachment styles. Do y'all remember when I was explaining in babies the attachment style and some of the initial research, and the one where like the baby kind of goes out to play and explore, then it comes back? So anxiously attached babies don't leave. They just stay. They just don't go explore. They're too afraid.
And then the avoidant don't come back.
It's like some Noah's Ark stuff at the end where he lets the birds go.
It's really like the hemispheres as well, this attachment stuff. Once we start noticing it, we keep learning about it and trying to connect it to our lived experience and some of the relationships we have. It's everywhere. It's too late. We are humans. It's already happening for us. And yeah, this understanding of, and again, it is a simplification to a large degree, but overall pretty fair to say, folks who lean avoidant, they're just going to have a blind spot related to folks who lean anxious are going to have a blind spot related to self-regulation. And when they learn, when they are able to like, nope, I'm not going to reach out to that person yet, or in some other way, avoid an anxious attachment behavior, and I'm going to actually do the self-regulation thing. Meanwhile, their brain is screaming at them like, this doesn't make any sense. This is useless. You know what you need to do. Just go and talk to them. And they actually holistically, like mind and body, they have the experience of performing a secure attachment behavior pattern. And then they like realize they didn't die. And that is how the brain learns. That is how attachment heals.
Okay.
And then on the avoidant side, it relates more to allowing ourselves to feel, which honestly is at least as difficult as, yeah, I'm going to do a breathing exercise. I'm going to self-regulate. Allowing ourselves to feel is freaking scary.
Yeah, so what I told her, I basically assume that they don't give a shit about what's going on with me internally, which is probably true to a great degree.
You mean the Navy?
anyone else in my life.
Yeah, most people.
But she was like,
Just about the bottom line.
Yeah.
and one of the characteristics you actually labeled, or not you, but whoever created that, labeled was logical on the avoidance side.
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, sure, but you're going to have to try. You're going to have to try talking to these people. We went back and forth. I was like, I don't want to burden them. And they're like, you don't get to decide what's a burden for them.
Oh, this is a cool therapist. It sounds like
Yeah, she was like, yeah, you don't get to decide what's actually a burden for them. If you're worried about it, you can ask them. And one thing I got good at, like, just growing up was, like, I can listen to someone else's, but I can't, like, as easily put it back out. And I can give healthy or helpful advice, but I can't go the other way with it.
Can't ask for advice.
I can't open up in the first place.
problem I have, and maybe or maybe not receive advice, but this is the problem I'm experiencing,
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
difficult feelings I'm having. Yeah, for sure. Earlier I mentioned, like, I grew up with, and for sure most of my 20s I had predominantly anxious attachment style. And again, if you think of that diagram, it goes all the way up to disorganized. I don't know where I was exactly, how far away from secure I was, but I had a lot of anxious attachment stuff going on. And now that has been addressed and at least to a decent degree healed. Most of my dysfunction, most of my issues are on the avoidance side now.
Yeah, definitely a railroad in the middle there.
You're talking about your sympathetic nervous system becoming activated at a time when it's not necessary, when it isn't really advantageous to you. It actually creates disadvantages for you. So from a physiological perspective, an emotional perspective, it's actually kind of the same thing. Yes.
Oh, yep. Yeah, they're both examples of insecure attachment. Yep.
Okay.
And they're manifesting in mostly similar things, but behaviorally, and then our sense of identity, the stories we live in, basically.
Okay.
On the avoidance side, a lot of the stories are independence good. And some, like at their most extreme, folks who lean avoidant are hyper independent in ways that most people can see that's too much, that's too far. But not to them, it just keeps making sense. The story is, I'm just this competent. I'm just like, I can do it all myself. And also, other people don't give a shit. Other people don't, and all of the stories are
they
reinforcing.
fuck up my efforts.
Yeah, and again, in our
But
defense.
but you know what? There's a lot of motherfuckers who will hold you back.
Exactly. No, I'm
You
saying
know?
in our defense, we're not 100% wrong. And the same goes for folks who lean predominantly anxious. They're not always wrong. Sometimes they are being cheated on and experiencing a
Okay,
lot of
sure.
jealousy. It's not just because they have anxious attachment. It's because they did sense something. Wait, you've been talking to Jerry a whole lot.
Oh,
What the
okay,
fuck?
I see.
Oh, I was right this time. Yeah, we're not just wrong. I think this is a helpful, like, kind of visualization and conceptualization of it. Yes, it is simplified. Once you get the core of it, I think is largely what I've shared, right? That attachment is about emotional safety, leading to trust, leading to cooperation. These are the two main ways it gets effed up. This one, anxious, involves oversensitization to losing co-regulation because self-regulation is in the blind spot. And then avoidant, the way that it goes awry is that co-regulation goes in the blind spot, and there's really hyper-focused on being able to self-regulate, which effectively ends up being nobody with feelings near me. But also,
Sure.
I'm not going to share my feelings in the first place. I'm going to be out of touch with them. If you remember also back to the baby that was looking chill and initially seemed
Right.
more chill, and then it turns out somewhere inside they're actually really not okay.
Being expressive.
So the baby that's like, when you're talking about the secure one will leave the mother and come back, or go out, play, come back. The anxious one is going to be feeling the same way when they're staying with the mother as the avoidant one staying out to play when really it doesn't want to stay out to play.
Possibly.
If you hooked up a monitor, it might look the same.
Yeah. I think quite possibly. It's just so hard to know
Right,
like
you
how
can't
they're
know.
feeling. And I know I'm using very similar language to what you just used, but yeah, looking at the research and where we started with how do you know? How can you know anything? There could be so many confounding variables with this. But yeah, it does seem from the research that some of these claims are like pretty reliable, at least.
So the way to do it would be give everybody an aura ring, or
Quite possibly. Therapy. Some therapists consistently are like, it's a clip on the finger one, a heart monitor. And as soon as your heart rate reaches above whatever, then we pause and we all do breathing exercises, help calm the body again, and then we can get back to it. And it's just because when we get dysregulated, we're moving into fight or flight. In fight or flight, all of the energy for the prefrontal cortex is shunted back to the older brain regions that have to do with spatial reasoning and running and getting the hell out.
You can't change while you're like that.
Learning, really bad. But also all the stuff that's up here is long-term thinking, perspective taking, nuanced thinking, wisdom is a category we might call a lot of this. And all of that goes offline. So if you're like in a romantic relationship, let's say, where stakes are high, we've built our life together and stuff, and like part of us is freaking out about, man, what if this doesn't work out? And we get out of our window of tolerance, central nervous system gets really dysregulated, we go into some level of fight or flight, and the long-term thinking goes offline, then we don't give a shit what happens in the long term. We say whatever we want. Perspective taking, that's one of the most detrimental things in couples work. When the perspective taking can't happen anymore because of the state of the central nervous system, not getting anywhere. So I tend to use more visual cues, and part of it, I think it's a good idea, I'm not against it, but part of why I don't use that is I'm trying to actually just reflect back to folks and ask them to self-assess instead of exclusively relying on that, which it can serve its purpose in a sort of training wheels kind of way. It's like a great way to start. But at some point, like, you're not going to live with that on. And you got to start to notice what are the cues. And similar thing, but actually trickier for folks who lean avoidant, the cues aren't as obvious. The heart rate monitor might actually be especially helpful there because they tend to not feel like stuff is all that bad. And part of it is they're still thinking logically and at least in the way that the left hemisphere has this self-consistent logic. My logic, this works perfectly.
Yeah.
And so they're not emoting, they're not getting all big and angry or jealous or whatever, like someone who leans anxious would. And so it can look like this is the chill one, this is the crazy one in the couples therapy.
I can tell you, when people describe a lot of the jealousy they have, especially retroactive jealousy.
Previous thing?
Like when people talk about like getting upset when their partner talks about somebody they dated before. I don't experience that. I'm always I really don't give a shit what somebody did last week, last month. I don't even care what somebody did last night, as long as they're doing what I need them to do today.
Yeah.
But I've had people tell me that actually sounds too reductive, that it discounts the past too much. Because then people are like, how do you know then? How do you say, this person did all this for me before, so I should be loyal to them now? And I'm like, to me, that becomes more of a cognitive exercise than an emotional one. A lot of it is because I'm just like, from the way I grew up going between homelessness and foster homes, and you doing everything perfectly, and then you get kicked out. You think you're doing everything perfectly to the day they can't stand you and you're out. And there's no predictive data. So I just assume in a non-transactional relationship, people are going to keep me around until they don't feel like it anymore. You know what I'm saying? People are going to stay around until they don't. And that decision is going to be based on however they fucking feel that day. And that, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, that's just what my experience was. Like, people are just going to treat me however they fucking feel like.
Yeah.
And there's not really any brakes on it. So I learned to discount the past and just say, people are on my side right now, I'll take it. Or people aren't on my side, and best of luck to them.
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking you, is that jealousy thing, is that a way of saying, like you said, jealousy is mostly motivated by anger, or it has a huge anger component.
Yep.
Is that jealousy thing a way of trying to protect yourself from manipulation, or trying to protect your investment in someone else?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a few different ways that jealousy arises, or maybe even a few different flavors of jealousy, but it almost always is mostly about insecurity of some sort. And not necessarily in the attachment way, but like also. But yeah, a sort of this, if this is true, let's say infidelity, like one partner cheating on another, even though they had agreed, like, our relationship is not like that. The feeling of, oh, they're flirting with somebody else or they're cheating on me in some other significant way brings up a I'm not good enough feeling that is the main fuel.
So wait, you're saying that jealousy has more to do with self-definition, or there's a big component of self-definition in there?
Yeah, I think it is most commonly a self-esteem. So self-definition sounds very unemotional.
Okay.
I think the main part of the answer is yes.
You're making a good point. I am talking in more of a sense of autobiographical self,
Ah, okay.
in more of a verbal, logical kind of way. Like, how do I define myself? But what you're saying is it's more of the self as an emotional tale, as an emotional story, not so much just here's my hero's journey.
Most people's sense of identity is a very emotionally charged story.
Okay. Yeah, so your memories are themselves emotionally charged. You're not going to remember something that has no emotional value attached to it.
Yeah.
And you can actually reinforce memories by telling a similar story with a strong emotional component. And then you reference that previous memory and it becomes even stronger in your mind. I guess what I'm saying is, when you talk about that jealousy, are you saying that it's a threat to their emotional image of themselves or the feeling they have about the image of themselves?
I think,
how could I get cheated on?
I think,
You know what I'm saying?
I think that is a significant, maybe the main, but definitely a significant component to it. I'll give you two caveats. One of the other main ones is the attachment, like fear of abandonment thing. And certainly the cost in terms of like nuts and bolts of evolution, right? The cost of bearing a child for a woman if their male partner or some other form of support is showing signs of not sticking around and not supporting them anymore. That was a really big problem. It still
sure,
is
yeah.
in most cases around
yeah,
the world.
well, I can
but-
tell the Section 8 apartments are full of people that happen to.
So that's where a lot the functional purpose of jealousy and of I'll murder that bitch kind of feelings of like jealous of another woman kind of thing. That is very adaptive and makes so much sense.
Sure.
If we understand the cost of childbearing and of losing support in that
Okay.
kind of context.
And that kind of helps explain like why you would be mad at the other person
Yeah.
rather than just being mad at the person being infidelity. You know what I mean? Because when I think about cheating, like, why would I ever be mad at the person who's outside the relationship? They're getting it where they can.
Yeah.
They're not the one digging up and breaking this shit.
Except if you're in a hunter-gatherer group, everybody would know each other. So inflicting that cost on that other person would demonstrate to the rest of the group. But we live in a society now where there's basically anonymity in numbers. So it's almost become this evolutionary relic where your jealousy no longer has that impact, but you're still evolved to feel it.
Yeah. So much of what mental health work is comes down to the mismatch between the niche we evolved in and this insane world we live in.
I think the most prominent mental health problem that we have in our society is just overstimulation.
It's at least becoming that if that is not already the case. Yeah, it is. Yep.
We got the cars going by on the road. That alone
Yeah.
is outside of the natural, of what would exist naturally. Then you got light pollution all night long. Like, you can't even see the stars. Like, we went to the Upper Peninsula, and it was the first time we had seen the stars like that. Even on the boat, you had a lot of light pollution.
If you go towards the bow, basically all the lights are usually off.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
a good spot. And then like during landings, they turn all the lights off. But you're going to be looking at the aircraft when
It's not the time to look at the stars.
the best time to look at the stars is when the bow's are already full of aircraft. During landings, that's when you go look up at the stars.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I know people who, like, you'll be hanging out with them, and they get 5, 6, 7, 8 texts an hour, and I don't even know how you survive that. If I get 5 in a day, I feel like I got a lot. I don't want no more than that.
This is one of the main ways in which I'm starting to feel old. Is like I more and more treating text like email. I'm like,
I'll look at it in the morning.
I can back this whenever I want. And just a lot of, even folks my age do not feel that way about it, but it's really great for my mental health.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and your focus, too. You probably get a lot more done.
I like to think so.
Okay. What else do you want to tell us about today?
What are we looking at time-wise here?
We got all day.
Rolling?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Just give me a chance to go to the men's room right quick.
Yeah. Do something similar.
Okay.
All right, something similar?
You know? Actually, I lived in a house in California where it was 3 bed, 1 bath.
Okay.
And trying to use the bathroom in the morning was fucking impossible.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We'll do at least a little bit on meditation.
Oh,
What's up?
Dealing with someone with, like that coworker I said, they wouldn't go work on their own. But sometimes we really fucking needed them to go work on their own. You know what I mean? Yeah. Could it be effective to label what it seems they're feeling? Or should I not for their own sake? Because...
Fear?
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, seems like you're scared of something. You want to talk about it?
Okay.
It could be.
That's my own thought pattern is, does addressing that emotion in that context actually make sense?
So it could make all the sense in the world, but it very much depends on that person's receptivity. Like how's that going to make them feel to have that emotion called out? Also, if you're wrong and it's not that emotion, then how does that make them feel? And if you're right and they're like hoping nobody notices or something like, which is understandable, and they're like, hey, fuck you, man, I don't know, I'm scared.
That's actually fucking impossible, but yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it could be, depending on that person's like receptivity, more or less their skillfulness related to their feelings, and perhaps somewhat dependent on your skillfulness as well.
Yeah, in relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I got a commitment later tonight, and I need to be
Not acceptable.
getting home
No.
to get ready for that.
All to get fucked.
I did, and they wouldn't.
I said no.
It was very rude.
Yeah, I guess what I was asking is co-regulation, trying to help someone who's being anxious through co-regulation. Is that helpful? Yes. Both self and co-regulation is helpful regardless of which side you land on.
Yeah.
But you need both always.
Both of those are good options, and being self-aware and competent in them is really beneficial.
Basically what I think is if you're anxiously attached, right, you're going to use co-regulation as a means to self-regulation.
That's what they're trying to do.
Or what I'm saying is, okay, if you say you, Dave, are anxiously, I can be like, Dave, I hear what you're saying right now, but what I need you to try and do, dude, is take a deep breath on your own and think about it yourself when you're in that situation. So it's using that co-regulation to an end where it's actually them learning self-regulation.
In your example, is the co-regulation the therapist talking to the person with anxious attachment?
Yes.
That is a big part of how therapy works, is that the therapist-client relationship has at least the potential of being a really healthy model that can have a positive impact on the client. So, yes. But of course, the therapist won't be there next time when it happens. So in the moment, it won't be co-regulation as self-regulation. It'll just be the client on their own having to do the self-regulation thing. Yeah.
And like, so I use, when I know that something's only going to get better through co-regulation, I use self-regulation to get me to use the co-regulation is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's super intentional. It's actually hyper fucking intentional when it tells you. You get what I mean?
Yep.
Versus with them,
Yeah.
it's going to be hyper intentional when they use self-regulation.
Yes.
And it's the bridge that I'm using to get to that co-regulation point is self-regulation. So would they maybe use co-regulation as a point to where they get to that self-regulation?
Yeah.
Like, hey, Jake, I'm feeling like shit. And then they sit back and or I'm like, okay, babe, I'm feeling like shit.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Right on.
All right.
You got the mic, man?
Gee.
Yeah, dude. That's like,
I know. Yeah.
Just to be your buddy, dude.
you can pick them up by the
Yeah, I know. I like can't ignore dogs.
Yeah.
I'll be very distracted.
Okay.
He's in my lap.
Come here, old man.
More distracted than I already
Old
am.
man. Come on. Put your butt over here.
I'm bored of you, man.
Settle for me. Okay? This country was built by settlers.
So settle down.
Right.
Oh my god.
I don't know. The AI on that camera, it don't want to focus on me.
There it goes.
Oh, there it is. Did you see it?
I did.
Yeah.
That
So
was cool.
yeah, they're actually pretty good cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one dialed in on you a little better once we got a light on your face.
What's up, dog? Thanks for dialing in on me.
We're going to talk about meditation.
So give me
Hell
your
yeah.
thoughts before we talk about meditation. Give me your thoughts on the setup here.
I've never been on a podcast before. This is awesome. Best podcast I've ever been on. Cameron, knocking it out of the park, man. I also don't know a decent amount about tech equipment, but I never tried to get into the podcasting space. One of the dudes who I tried to tell him no, but who's going to be there at this thing tonight is in podcasting and trying to make it his main career. I bet that would be a fun connect.
We'd be happy to have him on.
Probably be happy. to
It's
have
Clint,
this on.
the D&D thing.
Do you have a specific?
The tech part is what he's like trying to do professionally. Is like, so what you figured out
yeah.
and did for yourself, he's trying to provide that service for other people who are like, I want to start a podcast.
Oh, sure.
Not
Yeah.
a bad idea.
He's welcome to take our. I'll tell you, I did a lot of research.
He might tell us how to use it better.
He could.
He's more knowledgeable currently on the audio side as opposed to the video side.
The audio side is okay. Bad video doesn't make people drop out unless it stays bad. But your audio turns bad for a second, and you can just see the audience just plummet immediately. Right? And I honestly wonder if you ask people, is it cognitively registering to them that the audio's off and that's why they're dropping, or if it's suddenly they just don't feel like it anymore.
I definitely notice exactly why I'm leaving. If it's the audio or the video.
So if he's helping them get the audio part, that's actually more important, in my opinion, than getting the video part.
Especially if you can put the video part on this kind of autopilot. AI does whatever percentage of it.
Well,
That's huge.
yeah, except my AI laptop, I had to send it back to HP. By the way, HP, they are really good about it. They were very responsive. They sent me a box to get it sent back to them.
Nice.
We'll have it sent back to them tomorrow. Took a little while for it to get here, but it's because of shipping delays during the holidays. Give it another 2 to 3 weeks. So unfortunately, we won't have the video follows audio switching on this episode, but don't worry, we'll get you on here. We'll make you look even better.
Hey man, don't thank them before they send it back.
So far, so good. So far, they're so good.
Broadcasting our pirate signal to take down HP.
You wanted to talk about meditation.
So meditation is the other thing that I am super into and like excited about and has very clear positive mental health tie-ins. So I also get to involve it professionally in my practice as it is. And I've also started a meditation company, which is in very early stages, which is to say nobody knows about it.
Are you taking clients for that meditation company? Or
Yeah, website's up.
What website?
So the website is demystifiedmeditation.com. But
Dave
currently,
Christensen, demystifiedmeditation.com.
it's only an in-person service in Edina, Minnesota for now.
If you're in the
Twin Cities, then you should
Yeah.
check it out. what I want to talk about today is really more like the neurological and theoretical underpinnings of meditation and why it rocks and what the hell is going on. Because I don't know what y'all think about meditation, but I would say most folks, let's say like somewhat educated, probably know it's like helpful to reduce stress. If anything, people know it's related to Buddhism, helps reduce stress. Cool.
So to me, it's essential. It's an essential part of
What do you do?
life routine. Oh, I just count my breaths.
Cool.
It's just meditation on the breath.
Wow.
And it's
I don't think I knew that.
It's actually how I
That's
prefer.
exciting.
It's how I start the day. A YouTube channel, a YouTuber I follow is Nick Mahavan. He's a Buddhist monk in Thailand, and what he said in one of his videos is, start the day by finding a place of peace. However it is you do that, because once you go out the door and you're out in the world, it's so much harder to find it. So find it first thing in the day, and then you can return to it later in the day when you need it.
Yeah.
I will say I'm not perfect about doing it every day.
Oh, but you're an avowed imperfectionist, so that's okay.
Yeah, I'd say I hit that target 3 or 4 times a week.
Hell yeah.
And it doesn't take a lot of time. You get up, you take a piss, and then you do your meditation, 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. 15 is not nothing. Not that 10 is nothing, but 15 is like pretty
Really?
decent chunk.
Okay. All right.
It all depends like what our goals are, like what are we expecting to get out of it. So like typically if we're talking about like absolutely transform your life, that's like probably 2 hours a day, or just go on a silent meditation retreat for a week or whatever. And but then you also still have to sustain some kind of practice after that. But for mental health purposes, for find a little peace, you can get so much out of a 10-minute, 15-minute a day practice. So that's fantastic.
So Jake says that meditation...
There's the one fact I think I know.
Cool. Yeah.
Is for people who did a lot of research on addiction and everything.
Okay, cool.
And that's where I think I learned that in order to change that, there's 2 effective ways to go about it. Is really deep prayer or really deep meditation are like the only 2 ways to get your brain into that level of plasticity where it can actually start switching enough connections to get you away from those addictions that completely override your reward systems, where you want the heroin more than you want the food.
As opposed to other additional ways that they could seek help. But
community, actual license.
yeah, in most cases, that's going to be beneficial. But one of the best, but also one of the dumbest things that we hear people say, and that I'm sure I also say, things people say about meditation is that it literally changes the brain, when everything literally changes the brain. But of course, they do mean in this way where in a fMRI, they can notice differences in brain activity and network connectivity between Olympic level meditators, medium and no meditation people. There's tangible, quite clear differences that are replicable. It changes the brain. And in the way of either addiction type stuff, but really anything else that involves psychological rigidity. You referenced plasticity. Psychological flexibility is the name of the game in terms of mental health stuff. We can achieve so much if, as part of what we're going about doing in life, we're working to improve our psychological flexibility. And meditation is just one of the best things to enable that.
What type of meditation do you... Let's just say this. Let's say you're brand new. You're a novice.
I am.
You ain't never done no meditation.
Yeah.
Or you heard about it, maybe you tried something, it didn't work.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to that person? What's a good gateway drug?
So if this is a client of mine, and I'm also going to be able to like see them somewhat regularly and provide them like coaching feedback, then I actually don't even have to use that word. I just say, let's start working on attention training. And because of how fractured our attention is these days, how overstimulated we are, like we were talking about earlier, almost everybody is like, attention training? Cool. And then I go, hey, bad news. This also goes by another name, meditation. Hope that doesn't freak you out.
Call it meditation training? That's good
attention.
branding.
Attention training.
Attention training.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's incredible that my company has now taken off and become extremely successful. No, it's not. That's not surprising at all because I hate marketing. But I love meditation. So meditation as attention training is how I want to be pitching it to folks for multiple reasons. One, that's mostly what it is, really. It continues to mostly be about attention training for a very long time. So yes, like folks do benefit from a decent amount of kind of coaching and troubleshooting along their way. One of the main challenges also that most people have with the meditation practice is the habit part of it, like building a new habit.
Yeah.
And there's so many reasons for that, but that is one of the main reasons that I started the meditation company, is so that it can be a community, right? Stuff that convinces people and that motivates people. One of the most motivating things is, I refer to it as, people like us do things like this. When we feel part of a community that is like doing something, that's about something, that feels good. People love that and they respond really well, and it's very motivating if it's not just you doing the meditation.
You're trying to do group meditation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I'm trying to start. We'll see what all develops from this. But part of specifically for the company as well, part of the pitch is that it is mental health focused meditation / attention training. But yeah, so that's how I pitch it to folks, especially in a therapeutic context. If you say meditation, it conjures up so many associations for most folks. Whereas if you say attention training instead, that removes it from any like Buddhist robes and chanting kind of imagery that some folks would have a hard time with in various ways. So it's like, this is a mental health practice. You can train your attention.
I'm gonna pay you to teach me how to shake my hands.
Yeah.
So what kind of outcomes can you expect from that?
Okay. The core skills or mental processes or mental abilities that you are improving, that is what all the then benefits actually derive from. First skill is stability of attention, which kind of make a lot of sense if you think of attention training. It's probably largely to do with stability of attention. We're not like trying to make our attention like run an obstacle course or something, which there is that kind of thing that you can do in meditative practices, but especially starting out, it's just stability of attention. And then the next thing that under ideal circumstances actually just starts to come along for the ride, even without hardly any additional effort, is mindfulness. Now, I'll briefly define mindfulness as a functional, adaptive, healthy relationship between our narrow beam of attention and the broad field of awareness. And so we're right back to talking about the brain hemispheres. The left hemisphere, which is all about control, has that narrow beam of attention over which we feel a sense of agency. We feel like I can point my attention at, whereas that broad field of awareness is just this open, receptive, vigilant field. You can't point awareness somewhere, right?
Sure.
Basically, we have very little sense of agency, especially direct agency over our field of awareness. It just is. It's there. It's the background is often how it feels like, really.
So with this improved mindfulness, you would have better awareness?
That is what it feels like.
It's a feeling of awareness.
This is going to sound like the stupidest shit ever, but it's actually pretty fair to say that you will have more awareness of awareness. Because it is always on, it's this field, but the relationship between attention and awareness is often really shit for people. And that's what this overstimulation and
you got to start. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to pay attention.
Yeah, the picture you were painting earlier.
Well, you've got there's an entire layer of your brain that provides a gain control on your perception, and it throttles things up or turns them down.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of times when I see somebody and they're at the mall and they're looking at their phone very intently, I'm wondering if they're actually trying to turn down the stimulation. But the way you're doing that is by turning to something that actually stimulates you even more.
Yeah.
So we get caught in this loop where we're actually trying to escape this overstimulation.
It's trying to avoid a noise with more noise.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so a better relationship with your own sense of attention.
Better relationship between your attention and your awareness.
He's just barely under the camera.
So funny.
He's in
All
it.
right.
He's still in it.
Is it okay?
You can see us fine.
All right, we'll let him.
I'm seeing a wicker basket.
All right, he's not
Okay.
photobombing. Okay.
Oh, okay, so that's the pitch. It's attention training. The benefits is what you were asking
So
for.
when you talk about attention training,
Yeah.
I was reading an article by a person who studies attention span, and she was saying, like, 20 years ago when she started testing adults, the average attention span was like 2 minutes and 43 seconds. And now in adults, the average attention span is like 43 seconds.
Yeah.
It's dropped by 70%. So you have to figure, if your attention span has dropped that much, you've lost edge. And just,
So much.
if you
for
can
sure,
just
yeah.
improve that attention span to 90 seconds, you're going to have an edge. Like, you are going to have a competitive edge. Like, just from a business perspective, you'll have a competitive edge over your coworkers, your competitors.
But having a shorter attention span would also help you move away from the trash that's in front of you.
No, on its own, it would not necessarily. We wouldn't be able to bring an intentional skillfulness to it in that moment. And odds are very good that we just move to a different track. Is the thing.
You're not aware of it.
So you're just like a pinball.
Yeah. The relationship between attention and awareness is our ability to reconnect to the big picture in so many ways, in all various ways. But that is so often what we're failing to do in life. So we might be jumping from one thing to another, but still not connecting to, like, why am I even doing this, for example? So that relationship, slightly different way of putting it is mindfulness is improving our ability to reconnect to the big picture, to reconnect to meaning, to reconnect to the big context of what we want, what the plan is, what time it is, where am I going, from very concrete things to like really like cosmic level things.
Okay. So when you talk about, okay, I take the approach that life is basically, it's at its most important point, it's a spiritual journey.
Okay.
That gives me sense of purpose in a lot of ways, because I can say, even if I'm fucking up, as long as I'm learning something, I'm developing spiritually.
Yeah.
So is that sense of awareness then, that improved awareness you gain from meditation, is that kind of does that provide a sense of spiritual growth? Is that what
A lot of people do use that kind of language. Not everybody is comfortable with that language for various reasons. But yes, and actually I think that it is typical of what most folks describe as religious experiences, and what the literature even points to as a religious experience, which is often a little more extreme, a little more intense than just as we might use it colloquially. But I think in all cases, one of the components of that is folks say they feel connected to something bigger than themselves. And like that is this connect to the big picture, right? That is this broad awareness kind of experience that we can have and that we can feel more connected to more consistently. Yes, and it's also in the most basic nuts and bolts way that I was referring to earlier, and which also goes to the like having an edge kind of thing, where it's I can reconnect to what time is it? I can reconnect to where am I in the plan of what we said we're going to do or what I was trying to achieve, right? And so often we're like falling short or shooting ourselves in the foot because we didn't reconnect to the big picture consistently enough.
brain benefits
Oh yeah.
to this?
Yes. Yeah.
Since we were talking about left brain, right brain,
Yeah.
it sounds like it improves the connection
Yep.
or the communication between the two.
Becomes more functional in the way that if we go back to Ian McGilchrist's master and emissary kind of metaphor or analogy, whichever, the way that we don't really want things to lean is that the emissary is taking over, getting too big for its britches, and I know everything that there is to know, when actually it doesn't know what it doesn't know. It isn't connected to the big picture. And this really allows a very functional, healthy relationship between the left hemisphere, which is more about control. It is not about the big picture. It's about this thing right now. And it has all of the tendencies it has. And the relationship to the big picture, the right hemisphere, and the sense of meaning, the sense of interconnectedness that we can experience in life. And one way that folks often experience, to make a relatively extreme example, often experience burnout is even in a job where they wanted the job, they start losing touch with why they're doing it. And it's just that they're working hard. That's all it is. Or maybe they signed on because there was a boss that they really respected and they're like, I could work for this person. And they're working really hard, and then that boss leaves and gets replaced by some kind of tool bag. and they're all of a sudden, the meaning is gone from this. Reason that I was
number
here.
one reason most people leave a job is
Their boss. I want to take us back to the question of the benefits. And some of the benefits are actually just really difficult to talk about. And I think it's just because it's right hemisphere stuff. It's nonverbal stuff that's hard to make kind of actionable or like really concrete. But some of the most concrete and the earliest benefits that folks tend to notice is that their focus improves. That is literally stability of attention, which is
That's
an
huge.
edge in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so why aren't people doing this?
it's an edge in every area of your life.
Yeah. One of the next ones is emotional regulation. So yes, meditation can help you reduce stress, but really what that is functionally is emotional regulation. And one of the main reasons that it's helpful with that is that emotions are actually primarily in the body, and they are this thing that we just don't tend to pay a lot of attention to. It falls into the background, and then big emotions come up and they like get the better of us. They start directing us. Earlier we were referring to having survival responses, being out of our kind of central nervous system window of tolerance, where getting close to fight or flight, or something like that, right? When emotions get really big and we're not aware of them, no way that we can be skillful, at least not on purpose, not intentionally skillful, right? So emotional regulation tends to improve, and in large part that's just because awareness of bodily sensations, awareness of feelings and emotions tends to improve. And so that is huge, man. Again, I'll connect it to the attachment thing, right? Attachment has to do with the social emotions and a lot of the nonverbal, a lot of the embodied aspects of relationshiping. If we are more aware of the feelings and the embodied emotions that we're having in a relational context, we're going to be able to be much more skillful, relationally speaking. If we notice some frustration or some jealousy coming up, we might be able to just take a deep breath and notice it and be like, hey, I'm noticing a lot of jealousy coming up when you're talking about Jeff. Does Jeff has really big pecs? I'm very jealous. But we can be aware of that, and we can narrate for our partner, oh, this is what's coming up. Like, I don't want to just like all of a sudden be a dick to you because of that jealousy and like not realize that's what's driving my being mean to you. Instead, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to share with you, this is the emotion that's coming up. I don't think something's really going on with you and Jeff, but I just thought I would share it because it's coming up. This is what my brain is doing to me, for me right now. Yeah, emotional regulation, that's one of the other benefits.
Better focus and emotional regulation.
Oh, I know, man. Big fan over here. Yeah. I feel like I'm forgetting one. It's been a minute since I've done a basic, hey, these are the benefits kind of thing.
Look it up.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. Okay. I knew there were three, but the stress management, so that was the third one. So we're all good there. But then, last thing, I think, like for today, the other benefit, but that does tend to take a little bit longer and doesn't always just automatically start happening, as it is almost the case that it's automatic with the first two that we talked about. But another really big benefit is increase in self-understanding and self-compassion. And this, again, goes back to the sort of psychological flexibility angle, where we are just able to imagine other selves, other stories of me-ness, if that makes sense. And we're allowed to let go of a lot of the identity stories that we have had, and that feels more like they've had their claws in us, not that we're holding on to them in any intentional way.
So more ability to, how do I put this?
I was just trying to think.
So not necessarily rewrite your story, but see other possible narratives of your life.
Yes.
That's actually one thing that I've noticed with him. He forgives himself way faster since I've been back than before I went in the Navy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you. These things
Right.
that
To
we
the
do are
point it
gifts
sometimes
to the people
frustrates.
around us too. Oh, really?
So I think you should beat yourself up a little longer. Come on.
Yeah, but yeah.
One of the reasons that I think that happens is because, and this is of course directly related to the improved self-awareness, improved self-understanding, is we start to notice the basic functioning of mind as we meditate. Because inevitably, in a very classic example, we point the attention at the breath, we get distracted, that's the next step. We realize we've become distracted, that's the next step. And then we have whatever reactions we have. And then we just start over. So actually there's 3 steps. Focus on the breath, get distracted, realize we're distracted, start over. It's 3 steps. But within that, this realize we've become distracted, that's actually where the work happens, the progress happens, where we can coach ourselves. A common early days experience is that we're very frustrated that we've become distracted again. And we actually have the opportunity so many times, because it just keeps happening while we're meditating, keep having the opportunity to ask, how do I want to treat myself when I notice a mistake that I've messed up? Or in this case, it's barely that, but we have failed at our goal of maintaining attention on the breath.
Really, well, fuck that.
That's it. Yeah. And that's actually just, that is part of the nature of mind, that it wants novelty. And the breath is boring as fuck. And very quickly, a part of us starts saying, it's the breath. This is boring. Stop it. Start looking at other things. And so distractibility is very understandable in this case.
So I don't know how accurate of a way this is to think about it, but the way I think about it is those connections that are distractible, that focus in on this and think about that and this and that, right? All those synapses, they get tired, right? If I'm using them at 5 a.m., I'm not going to be using them at 2 p.m., like when I need it. By focusing on, by pushing the synapses that focus, I wear them out. And that allows the rest of my brain to be a little bit more on the ball, on the game later in the day.
Okay.
And then if I need to get them to shut off for a little bit so that they can clear the amyloid beta and...
This guy. So I don't know if that lines up neurologically with what I'm describing, but I mean that it might. We were talking about how our self-understanding, self-perception, and self-compassion can change for the better with this. As we start being more understanding, more accepting of this very boring and minute example of failing, quote unquote, that gradually starts to expand. And we start to notice that not only in our meditative practice, where there's nonstop mistakes, nonstop failure, we're able to just, this is how attention works, gets distracted. And that we start being able to do that better in life in general. And we also do start to notice over time the progress that we're making.
Let's see how long before he's back.
He chunks through those in a matter of seconds.
You can't ignore it. You can't ignore his attention on wires.
Yeah. Okay. We got to wrap up pretty soon here, but here's one of the last things that I want to share with y'all, and this is related to mental health and meditation, attention training. One of the patterns, you get to notice all of these patterns of mind as you continue meditating. And one of the patterns, and the most basic pattern, which is the dopamine pattern, is this idea of the conditional happiness thought process or thought shape, where if you just start noticing, oh, is that thought a conditional happiness thought? It is unbelievable the percentage of our thoughts that are, if this, then good.
Oh, sure.
It's unbelievable. And so the more familiar you become with that, you actually get to start just questioning that. You get to start doubting that. You get to start hopping off that train when you start noticing that I can't be happy, because that's the implication, is I won't be happy until something.
Until some outcome.
Yeah. And so that is conditional happiness. And basically in attention training, in meditation, we can actually effectively be practicing unconditional happiness. Now, nobody's ever going to arrive. Dalai Lama doesn't arrive. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a possible human achievement.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect unconditional happiness. But man, any amount, similar to the like, improve your focus, it's like almost any amount is going to be worth it. So being able to notice, oh, look, check that out. Another conditional happiness claim. It's like our brain is bought in, fully believes it. It's like when you get married, laid, promoted, what, like all the things. And we actually gradually over time to have the choice.
Well, I wish I had a new car.
Millionaire, then I'll be happy. And whatever the goals are, they can even be like hunger. Now, I'm not saying ignore your hunger forever, but our ability to then like question it, doubt it, and then ask ourselves, what is wrong with now? What is, like, I'm breathing, I have enough food and I have more food over there. What is wrong with now? And it doesn't happen overnight. This isn't 2 weeks of meditation and you got it, right? But we can cultivate this ability to drop into the here and now and not shove away, but also not pay as much attention to all those conditional happiness thoughts and just love being me, or love experiencing this. And so that, if you don't experience it, and or if you're especially skeptical kind of human, which is totally fair, that is what the conditional happiness thoughts are, is dissatisfaction. And so the idea of, hey, one of the main promises of meditation is satisfaction. That's fucking laughable. Who's gonna buy that? And I think actually a little extra in the US culture, satisfaction is not satisfactory. We gotta go above and beyond. Right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And like satisfaction though, experientially, like when you can keep working at the meditation practice, you can get to a place where satisfaction is basically ecstatic. It is, wow, this is great. I love this. Anyway, and that doesn't mean like we don't have drive. That doesn't mean we give up on all of our goals just because I'm satisfied.
Well, that's like saying I rode on a roller coaster on Saturday. That's all the excitement I need for the whole rest of my life. Like feeling satisfied for an hour a day, or 20 minutes a day, or even 8 hours a day. You're still going to have all these hours to strive. To be thinking about how can I improve my life. But
the real difference is that we get the choice. We get to notice those messages and we get to ask, do I want to stay on that train?
Like saying, I'm saving up money so I can get a new car. Does that mean I shouldn't be able to enjoy the car I have right now?
Word.
One thing I notice is when you're doing that breathing exercise and you get distracted, right? So you start with counting the breath. You get distracted. You notice you're distracted. I've been told to label that distraction and then get back to that looks, from where I'm sitting, the same as when you're saying, what's wrong with now? And then you're just labeling and getting back to the now.
Yep.
You're labeling the future.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. And both of those are very good facilitative tools for a meditation practice. So counting isn't obligatory or the only way, but it can be really helpful. Labeling, same thing. The cat, because that's probably a disaster. Whatever that is.
Dave, thanks for coming on today.
Such a pleasure.
We hope to have you on again. Demystifyingmeditation.com.
Without the ing, demystify meditation.
Demystify, DEMISTIFY.
That sounds right to me.
Meditation.com.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes too.
We will.
All right.
We'll see you next.
I'll let y'all deal with this.